What about Ken Hinkley? This is the biggest score he's given up as a coach. It's one of his toughest and most disappointing days at the footy. They're going to show something that they're still in the fight this season. He'll be coaching for his future. And it's taken till round 15, but as far as statements go, they don't get much bigger than that from the Brisbane Lions. A 79-point trouncing of Port Adelaide.
All right, hello and welcome to the Creecast. My name is Dave, and as always, we sincerely appreciate you being here with us in what is a tough week as Port fans, as we deal with being the centre of the AFL world in some respects in media and talkback circles and social media and every other part of it in the negative and on the negative side of things. Before we get into that, I just wanted to mention that we recorded the first Patreon series last week. That I'm currently in the middle of editing a look back on 2004, look back on happier times. So we encourage you to get over to the Patreon and sign up for that. Patreon.com/thecreed1870. The first episode will be diving through the kind of the preseason, the lead into 2004, and then running through the matches that made up the 2004 minor round, which had a lot of significance towards what we were able to end up doing at the end of 2004 and the ultimate success that we did achieve. It all came off what was a pretty exciting minor round, actually, that we, when we dove back into it, we really found a lot of excitement in it and a lot of intriguing storylines as well. So get into that again, the patreon.com/thecreed1870. Oh, that's all just to distract from talking about what was unfortunately a far lesser of a good time on the weekend, as your Port Adelaide Footy Club had a particularly ugly loss, both in the raw data of the result, the deficit that it was, and just how badly beaten we were on the day. But also in the macro of it all, the culture and community fallout in Port Adelaide is just ugly and sad and unfortunate to be a part of. And ultimately, I know, both, I think I can speak for Jamie in saying this too, that while the method in how some metabolize the loss on social media is not one we agree with how they do it. The feelings, the frustration, the anger and hurt that is fueling kind of the outburst. We do understand it's hard when you're so passionate about a club and having to deal with the emotions that come after such a loss when we've been kind of thirsting for success for so long, particularly with the unique nature of having been backing the same coach for a long time. And for better or worse, it's just what we have to deal with now and try to chat about it in the next couple of hours. The scoreline, 23-14, 152 to 10-13, 73. Ironically, we recorded the same exact score that Brisbane scored against us in the 2004 Premiership decider. That was some macabre learnings for me when I looked into that. But almost, unfortunately, we're on the other side of it, and to almost the tune of double what we beat them by in 2004. I ended up not being able to watch it live. I caught up with it later because I got last-minute family trip to a brewery, which in retrospect seemed like the wise decision to go and pound a bunch of beers while watching a bunch of local radio personalities get dunked into a dunk tank. It is summer here now, and that's what I did while keeping an eye on the score and seeing the meltdown start to occur. So, Jamie, you were on the ground there. Tell me how it was. How did it feel? Give me it all. Rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, how good was the 04 Premiership?
Yeah, actually, let's just start the Patreon now.
Yeah. No, it was like having a Vietnam flashback, but you're still living Vietnam, and no disrespect to our veterans. Thank you for your service. But yeah, it was terrible afternoon. It was a complete waste of time to attend there, and as the glutton for punishment that I am and my family are, we stayed right to the end. I took my daughter for her, was it second game of the year, and up until that point she hadn't lost a game. So while we went into the matchup on Saturday with a bit of trepidation, admittedly, even from our preview of the game, I was hoping that my little good luck charm would pay off, and it went completely the other way. She had a fantastic time, I will say. She was loving it, and obviously, yeah, it was silver lining for our row, because it was a little comedic relief for us telling a 2.5-year-old to not clap the opposition as well. But yeah, no, getting back to the football, it was dire. It was bad. Our worst home and away loss, I think, since the North Melbourne game in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very similar. Our worst home loss, I think, since the 2021 preliminary final. And yeah, the downfall and the aftermath of it all draw parallels to those kind of games too. You're just and if you are one of my type of people, and you are a bit of a glutton for punishment and stay right to the end, you just end up you go from hopeful to angry to numb, and then you actually get like a little bit silly if you stay there. Like, you're going a little bit crazy, and it's because it's the only way that you can cope to last that long without turning around and melting your membership. But it was it was pretty terrible. Another bad loss on what should have been celebrated occasion, obviously being our 20th anniversary game. So it's extremely disappointing, and emotions were running high, but the emotions of it all now, what is it, 3 days later, are still bubbling away, boiling, in fact. And it kind of, while Port Adelaide supporters are quite passionate, and we can get a bit carried away, it's you take that hand in hand. It's both a positive and it can be a negative at times. It is at fever pitch. The pressure on the club right now is at fever pitch, and we've got to get a lot right in a short amount of time to keep those dogs at bay, because they're not going to go away. And now even interstate media is getting involved, which is always a bad sign, and harkens a little bit back, or it reminds me of the brief period of time before Ken actually came on board in terms of that scrutiny, particularly from the media. So yeah, interesting all round, to put it in a level-headed manner.
Yeah.
Understating it, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to some of that more. I guess we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I guess the way to probably try to do this as structurally as possible while our brains are still spinning. I also stayed to the end of the 2021 prelim as well, which I think we talked about because we caught up before that one. And that's just what I do as well.
Almost locked out.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Which was a bad sign. Yeah, the scanners weren't working, and I knew something was off.
Yeah, no, I remember being just feeling quite anxious in that line, and just thinking, this isn't good. This isn't a good start. But then you start going, oh, well, the universe doesn't work that way. It is all just random. But then it happens, and you go, maybe it does work that way. The game itself, it kind of, there's a lot of parallels to just kind of the worst of a lot of things we're going to talk about regarding the game. I think are going to be things we've talked about a lot this year when we've been having to focus in on the critical side of Port when they haven't played as well, because they have had some good runs of form this year, but it's just it's been it's more and more few and far between the last 6 to 8 weeks after what was a pretty good first start to the season. It seems like we're the contested ball was really bad on the day, which again is a storyline. Minus 40, I think it was. Inside 50. The inside 50s it was, I think, I'm just going to scroll through my stats here. Where is it? I've got a lot of screenshots in my list today because of what a shit show it was. 71 to 46 was the inside 50s. It's just a ridiculous number.
Terrible.
Yeah. And we've seen earlier in the year, and even last year, the years that we've been playing pretty good footy under, even if some of these little issues about contested ball and whatnot, we do get the overload in midfield due to just good pressure in midfield. And I think one of the things that's been brought up on, I think I didn't watch first crack properly, but I kind of caught bits of it. They talked about kind of the two-way running of our, and you and I have talked about it a bit on the podcast this year, and I think it's probably my main takeaway from the game is, again, when we're kind of going one way in midfield, it's going okay, but we still probably haven't got it with our link-up play isn't the best. But it's going the other way. Teams that are good, and Brisbane certainly are, they're a lot better than their ladder position portrayed. Teams, good, okay teams kind of get some success against us, but good teams will really punish us. And I think that's what they did on the weekend, was just we don't. And what was concerning was, I think there was one goal in the second quarter. Oh no, sorry, in the first quarter. And I think it's been highlighted in a few packages where Finlayson, not to pick him out because there's plenty of, but he's kind of on the wing, and you kind of see maybe he's not going to get to him, but just a little bit of pressure on the kick or anything like that would have just been handy. And that's the kind of those 1%ers that we highlight sometimes in the SWEENEY, is sometimes just those little things can change the course of a play. And as it turned out, it was a completely pressure-free kick. A couple of kicks later, they put it through the big sticks. And there's a few moments when, just the midfield guys, when the ball's starting to go the other way, they're jogging back a little bit, and it's just and suddenly it looks like Brisbane have got lots of space in midfield, and there's not even just one part. Like maybe it's not the corridor or it's the wing. They've got space in multiple avenues to go forward, and it's just like an overload of Brisbane colours going forward. And then even when you get down to the defence, because no one's running well enough, then even Radically is isolated Danaher, and there's a lot of isolation, and Ilya's getting outmarked because he's having to go one-on-one defending because he's not able to play his game, and everything starts from that front end, that forward defense, and that's just not working, and it's getting worse this year. It seems that they're not working for each other. You've said it a bunch of times, guys just not waiting for someone else to do the work. And it just is a feature here again. There was a couple of the moment on the wing where HORNE-FRANCIS is getting gang tackled by 2 or 3 Brisbane players, and there's another 2 or 3, it seems, around him, and he's kind of getting spun in the tackle, and he looks like he's looking for someone to handle to, and all he's seeing is probably, in his vision, it's like Jack and Rose and the Titanic spinning each other around. But all he's seeing is like Brisbane colours around him, and he's just like, well, and he lets the handball go, and I think even Rosie gets it shortly after. But then he gets tackled straight away, and so Brisbane was just swarming, and every time, even when we've got possession and could get a handball out, it's just all they saw was Brisbane colours around him, and not enough. And again, it's just structure across the field. It's not like. The defense is getting focused on, like, our recruitment. Our recruitment's getting a lot of focus, and I will, I will give that credence to that. That look, we have to have those discussions going forward. How we have estimated our list, if this keeps being the case, but you've just got to look at it. What our small sample size is, that we see a lot of other issues before that. I see issues in structure and how we're playing, and our application to whatever the game plan is, which is starting to be the question as well. Our application to executing that isn't good enough. So we can't ask the questions about the defensive recruits and some of those other things. We can have it in the back of our mind, but my big thing at the moment is just like, we need to show the best of this game plan consistently, and then see what we need. Because I just don't. A few years ago, when we finished top 4 and won those qualifying finals a couple of times, you saw like we were really played well in executing those that forward pressure and stopping some of that run in the midfield, and that's just gone away a lot in the last couple of years. And certainly this year, it's when teams are at their best, and it's every game. Once Collingwood got their run going against us, they got it. They worked through us so easily. The reason Adelaide have a 3 showdown winning streak is because this year was probably a little bit of our kicking, but then it's still they're last year they really ran through us quite well, and so it's not even sometimes it's not always good team like Hawthorn, although if you listen to Kane Corns, they might be on for the Premiership this year too. But I can't fault any positional group too much yet, while the game plan itself just isn't working, or isn't the application isn't there, and they're not, and just the questions that come out of it, and Bergman saying what he said about having to sit down and work out what we're doing for each other or whatever it was. And it's just, why has it taken until 3 weeks after the bye that we should have, this should have been a preseason thing, but then it was kind of obvious against Carlton. Like, why are we sitting here now? It's gotten worse rather than better. It's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned near the start of your comments there about the players waiting for someone else to do it. And I think for me, that was the most galling thing at the game live and the most obvious thing at the game. And one of the most frequently shouted things coming from my mouth is that once the pressure went up, and so for the first quarter and a half, we were facing a barrage of inside 50s and possessions going the other way. And we were holding up relatively well and actually managed to get some quality chains of possession to lead to goals and hang in there. Was it nearly halfway, a third of the way through the second quarter, and we came within 6 points, and you thought, all right, well, Brisbane haven't put us away. And it hopefully, or maybe it's going to be one of those games where they haven't taken their opportunities and we can turn the tide. That happened round one last year at the same venue against the same opponent, but their pressure lifted. I think Miles Bergman was on the radio yesterday and they commented on the fact that at one point in the game, our pressure was at 150, which is piss poor, and theirs went to essentially 250, which is an absolutely ridiculous number. That is off the charts to the max. It's rare that you see pressure rating that high, and they did it for a fairly consistent period of time too. Now, the thing that I thought was the most utterly pathetic part of our game was exactly what you said, and it's exactly what I've alluded to, particularly in the last month, is that everyone seems to be playing their own game of football. It's very individualist, and they were waiting for someone else to do the hard work so that they could get a cheap possession on the outside. That was the raw emotion and the raw viewing that I was seeing live, and the stats more or less back that up. And taking the stats out of it, the eye test would say that when there's a ball in dispute and several Brisbane players are putting in the hard work, but also supporting on the outside too. And we've got ball watchers just on the fringes. And like you said, the two-way running or lack thereof, just giving people way too much fucking space. And whether that's a deficiency in our zone application or not, you need to recognize when there's an issue. And we have been saying at various stages throughout this season that, there's this to fix, there's a little bit of this to fix. And, hopefully we're not talking about all these things to fix in the second half of the season. And now we're here. And like you said, we would have hoped to have an upswing in our game plan and positioning and effort, but it has fallen by the wayside. It's a comment that I made in the Carlton game about how I thought that their off-the-ball teamwork was in a lot better order than ours, and it's why I had a nervous feeling about us eventually losing that game. But at the end of the day, we were still competitive for three quarters. But whatever happened at three-quarter time of that game, as I've written on Twitter, completely ripped the soul out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but our season is unraveling before our eyes. And that's probably an extremist view. Every team goes through bad patches of form, but I think every football fan would say it's not the fact that you lose, it's how you lose. And that's a very cliche, that's a footy platitude that always gets thrown about, but it's exactly right. You can't serve that shit up and just expect to go, oh, well, we've still got a glass half full look at it. And we absolutely think that we can turn it around and challenge for the premiership. Structure, personnel, whatever it is, the biggest deficiencies in our game at the moment is the effort and the teamwork. And those, like in a team sport, those are non-negotiables no matter how much experience you have, no matter how much talent you have. Those two things specifically, and again, it's what I was chatting about at the start of Ken's reign, is that we didn't have a lot of, we had some blue chip talent, but we didn't have as skillful ball users in that period of time as, say, Hawthorn did. But our game plan was built on effort and speed. Now, speed, take that what it is. A lot of teams caught up to us in that regard, and fitness, even that out across the competition. But effort, like the point is effort, and the effort there is misplaced and quite reactive at the moment. Like as I said to you off air, I've just watched the first 3 quarters of the game from Saturday, and it was really odd because, again, knowing the end result, you can watch it with a little less emotion. And at different periods of time throughout the game, there seemed to be an effort, but it was like chickens running around with their heads cut off a little bit. Like it's, again, reactive effort once the ball was maybe already lost. But before that, you could have actually put in the effort to either win the ball, keep the ball in a tackle. The amount of times that balls came loose out of a tackle that benefited them, and all of a sudden we've sucked 2 or 3 players into that contest, and now they're all open. Like, it infuriated me on Saturday, and again, talking about it is starting to infuriate me again. But it's just this weird, like, that effort needs to be 2 or 3 moments before you're actually putting in that effort, because that effort in the end is just for show. That's once you've lost the contest essentially and lost the ball, and you're going, oh, well, I'm running, but you didn't put in the hard yards to begin with. You weren't hungry for the contest initially or once you've engaged, and you're just shooting everyone else in the foot because of it. And then, the guy on the outside's going, oh, I hope he wins it, because then I get one on the outside and I get to look good. But that's not what football fans want to see. That's especially not what Port Adelaide fans want to see. We don't give a shit. We don't give a shit how skillful you are. First and foremost is, if you're going to represent the club, you have to put in that dog-hungry effort. Even, and then, this is the Creed cast, right? Creed says you have to, to paraphrase, you have to exert all effort, and only once that is done, then you can admit defeat, essentially.
There can be honour in defeat only if and when all human endeavour on the field of play has been exhausted. Then you can go out, then you can have an after-match beer and say, I left it all out there, all 22 of us left it all out there, and we still got beaten. And generally, if you do that and you're a decent side, you won't get beaten by 79 points. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I was going to bring it up too. But you can keep going. But that effort betrayed the very essence of what the Port Adelaide Footy Club is about, in the tenets of the creed and just general Port Adelaide, the vibe of what Port Adelaide has been for 150 plus years. Has been tough, uncompromising footy. And there's a reason we don't have over 100 premierships, because you do sometimes get beaten by a better side, but you have to make sure they have to beat you rather than you beat yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's what we seem to be doing in the last 9 quarters of football, particularly, is beating ourselves. We're not even giving ourselves a chance. We're relying on, most of our goal sources were from the defensive half again on the weekend. We can't. I think we've spoken about that before, about, while it's good and I think we're league leaders, or we were when they brought out that graphic.
I haven't looked at too many league leading stuff lately, because we've been dropping a lot.
But cool. That defensive score source number is great, but that can't be the be all and end all of our game, particularly. And I've said it a few times, when we've been one of the pioneers of a front half football game, and some people don't like it, fans included, because it creates that congestion up forward. But if that's what gets you in the top 4, like maybe there's been a strategic shift over the last 12 months, or sorry, 9 months. But that can't be it. And we're just suffering. We're bleeding. So the reason why we have to be a good transition or defensive transition side is because we're bleeding so much from the center of the ground. The most important part of the ground, when all the champions in the game get their plaudits because they work in the middle, they do a lot of hard work. We're just not. And yeah, it's something is wrong. Obviously, that's an understatement.
Yes.
And again, Miles Bergman was on radio, and he alluded to the fact that while they all know what they want to do, and again, players and officials can only give up so much, but it's players are going away from whatever game plan we're trying to instill, and it's causing such a serious domino effect that we might be looking still quite very angry and still emotional, and all Port Adelaide fans might be still looking at it very irrationally, maybe. And that the effort that I was saying before is like chickens running around with their head cut off, like that might be there, but because there's so many other dominoes to the negative that have fallen, it just looks like a clusterfuck. And then like we was within 6 points, we were hanging in there and playing okay, and then all of a sudden they bang on 5 within 7 minutes or whatever the fuck it was, and half time you're going, oh well, this game's fucking over. It's a shocker. It's a shocker. And in these moments, it's hard to know. Now all of a sudden, it's hard to know where you're going to get your next win from, and where to go from here.
I mean, we'll get to. I was going to say we'll get to previewing St Kilda in a little while here, but we're I mean, just a first part of that preview, we're underdogs now, which is entirely based on the fact that we just are looking suddenly completely bereft of ideas. A few interesting stats I found just doing some article reading or whatever. Almost half of Port's losses, so 6 out of the 14 of the last 14 losses. So 14 losses in the past 2 seasons. 6 of them have been by at least 42 points. Collingwood in that time, since it started 23, have had no losses by at least 42 points. Any of their losses have been close. Melbourne have only had 1. Adelaide, Brisbane, Carlton, GWS, St Kilda, and Sydney just 2 each of at least 42 points or more. So that kind of shows that just when the game's going against us, we just don't know how to stop the tide. And that's a concerning part of the game plan. It does show, and I think you used the term when we were talking about the GWS game, you used the term bruise-free footy. It's always a tongue twister for me for some reason. I don't know why. Bruce-free footy. Bruce-free, yeah. See, I can't even say it twice in a row. But you just, and I was looking, I haven't gone into doing my picture dive yet for doing the graphics for the episode yet, so I haven't had too much of a look, but just a few of the pictures that come out of them, like those Guernseys look pretty clean after the game for some. And
it was a good day for football.
Yeah.
I would say.
But if you're going to be chasing tail that much, I'd at least like to see a few like grass stains on them still. But that's a very, very
I think
binary, arbitrary thing to look at. But
we actually won. Yeah, we won tackles, but in a heavy loss.
Because we were chasing tail.
That's usually a stat that the loser wins because you don't have your hands on the ball. That's for fucking sure.
When you lose, the big one is the contested possessions losing by 40, which is insanely bad. Like I can't put that's we often lose it by 5 to 10 in a win or a close loss. And sometimes the worst, like that loss to, I think the Collingwood one last year was like -50 or some ridiculous number. I can't remember it now, but I remember it at the time being one that was quite alarming in the general stratosphere, not just for Port games. It was just like, that doesn't happen too often. Conceding 12 consecutive goals, hadn't done that since Collingwood beat us by 138 points in 2011. So there's just
Ooh,
some
thankfully
run.
missed that game.
Yeah, Chad Gorn's final game. And yeah, and that was right from the dark days and the dark days we don't like to think about too much, but it's when you're having some of these stats like that, like even, Adelaide are, having an investigation in the advertisement, they're still not losing games as much. When they do, they're losing them tight and showing something in the battle part of the game. We just don't. We want to win games easy and with style, and when we don't have that, that's a major problem. Is like you need to have that plan B, and it's always been the thing. And I don't think a lot of coaches have a plan B per se.
No.
They just have a better plan A. That's the thing, is like every team has their style, and they have to kind of have little levers to pull and push and whatever within a game to kind of just balance out what you're doing versus what the opposition does. You don't have a complete plan B. You just have
No.
your plan A has got to be solid, and ours just clearly isn't and hasn't been for a couple of years. Last year I thought that 13 game win streak, which you can get drunk on wins, and when you're winning 13 in a row, you get really fucking wasted on it. It's fun. I had a lot of fun in that period with the memes and graphics and all that stuff, but and it felt like we'd found a little bit of something there. But then, once the injuries hit and a little bit of form tailed off and a few, it kind of, maybe that's a depth thing as well on list, all the list stuff. But then we went out and got guys this year. So, but then we just seem to go further away and back into some of the worst habits we've had over the last few years. And I do have the contention that maybe it's just the midfield development's just at a stage where we're not quite there yet we've got a lot of youth in there and trying to find that balance of the grunt in there as well with the style, because Butters and Rosie, well, can be sneaky good in a contested game and whatnot. It's just, we just haven't got the balance right. But yeah, some of those stats about just what we're doing is quite alarming. There was a quote from Dean Brogan of the 2004 team, apparently on ABC, just calling it white flag stuff, which you just don't want to be. That is kind of, milestone games and whatnot. We've got a terrible history in them lately.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is a
EBIT one
consistent theme.
showdown with the prison
Yeah.
bars, then this with the 2004 celebration.
Yeah, on top of some of the big games that other people chuck in there and whatnot. For whatever. Yeah. It's a terrible thing to have associated with your club, because you've alluded to the fact that Chris Scott has labelled us a bit of an emotional team, and I think it was still Sidebottom or Scott Pendlebury on radio after they played us earlier this season said, like, if they knew that if they lifted the pressure at a particular point in that game, that we would kind of fall off. And it's just terrible. It shouldn't be associated to any club. And again, as Port Adelaide supporters, knowing that we have the creed that sits there and we like to be known as that working class club and, get our nose, like we definitely don't want that associated to our club. And it's just rears its ugly head again.
Yeah. And I certainly don't think any of the players, I think we've got a lot of good skilled players and a good, Butters is second all time in fines already. I had a look and inflation or whatever, like when Brendan Favola's number might have been higher now if he'd been getting fined in the last few years, who knows? But his only contemporary is Toby Green, who's 230 games in and only has a couple of $1,000 more of fines. So Butters is probably going to clear that soon. So, he's a tough nut and a hard nut, and guys like Ollie Wines and Boak, I know Boak wasn't there, but there's a lot of tough play. It's just, again, it comes down to what the game day instructions are. And there's something wrong in the messaging and their understanding of what they've got to execute. I can't sit there and believe that they know what the game, like, they keep saying we know what we have to do or whatever, but then maybe the messaging, there has been some little weird messaging this year about them, maybe, whether the messaging's right from coaches or whatever. And it's just like, there's been some, I can't think of any examples right now. It's only just popped into my head now, but I feel like there has been some little bits come out when I've just been looking on Instagram or Twitter of, like, 5AA put up a post about something that's come up in an interview, and I just go, that's weird. Like, there's just little messaging things. There's just some little weird messaging things.
We were talking about Zach Butters' comments after the showdown about Yeah, and again, I can't really remember them verbatim, but
Mhm.
yeah, just yeah, we didn't really believe in ourselves or something
That's
like
one of
that.
the
And it
ones
was
I'm definitely thinking of.
just a
Yeah.
ridiculous thing to say. Well, and especially when we were reviewing it, we were like, you did pretty well. You just didn't fucking kick straight.
Yeah.
But yeah, just and yeah, I was talking about Miles Bergman being on the radio, and he said a lot of these things that are
Mhm.
kind of cryptic, but also kind of informative from one point of view. Yeah, and it all alludes to there's obviously a disconnect to some degree somewhere,
Mhm.
and how serious that disconnect is. And I'm not necessarily saying a disconnect between, like, from a relationship point of view. It's whether it's instructional, strategic, like even emotional, like when they cross that white line and they're on the field,
Mhm.
something's breaking down, and it's most prevalent now because that we've lost 3 games on the bounce, and yeah, we're left seemingly without answers. Now,
And they're all teams that
yeah,
we kind of want to be competing with, because we haven't even faced
yeah,
Sydney yet. But these are the other teams that we thought we'd be contending with for top four positioning. Sydney, ironically, probably the one that you weren't expecting to be up there this year, maybe. But yeah, these are the three teams that we all would have had, contending for top four if we did our
yeah,
preseason predictors or whatever of other teams. And so you're thinking, oh, we should, at least win half of the ones. And then so if we look at the last 3 weeks, we've been belted pretty comfortably as the score lines. Well, this week it was belted, but
yeah,
GWS was like flattering the scoreline was, and while we held with Carlton, they were probably just on top for 3 quarters, just as they were leading, and then they belted us in the last quarter. So we've had a belting from those teams, either
mm.
across a game or in parts of the game in the last 3 weeks, and yeah, and ourselves have just barely fired a shot.
Yeah. You hang on just before you move on.
Yeah, yeah, go for it. Yep.
You mentioned before about Plan Bs and all of that, and
Hmm.
yeah, I meant to comment before, but if you listen to enough professionals within the game, you realize that, like, there is no serious tangible plan B or C with any,
Hmm.
even the most successful team. And more often than not, I believe a plan B or a plan C is so intricate within modern football that punters, like us punters, like, we have no idea that it's actually been implemented,
Hmm.
because you know the vocal majority of football fans are fans of football from yesteryear, when some of those changes were a bit more tangible. Yeah, I just believe that the modern game is so intricate now that, yeah, like it. I think I said it before. Like, it may just be a line moving back and forth, or like being a bit deeper than they were before, or a bit further up than they were
Hmm.
before. Like, I think more often than not, some of those changes you don't even notice because you're watching a football bounce around an oval field, and you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
tackle, kick a goal, please. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Um,
especially these days when we were talking about it on our 2004 stuff again, patreon.com, the Creed 1870. We talk a
mm,
bit about, we make a mention of the rotations back in the early 2000s. Like, back
yeah,
then when players would spend long time, like maybe that's when you could, pull a lever, like that was a proper plan B. But now it's
yeah, proper
everyone's
impact player.
everyone's on and off the bench so much. It's not the game's just running. Your plan is just what it is. So yeah. I guess.
I
Mhm.
do think our zone is all of a sudden absolutely
Yeah.
terrible, and
Hmm.
I think we have a serious issue with, obviously, positioning, but B, leadership in implementing, like on-field leadership, implementing
Hmm.
that positive positioning, because we're just getting cut up at the moment. And like, I do have some apologist bullshit to come. So before we move on, like, it is important that we do sit kind of in this space for a little bit and just kind of get it all out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we're seemingly just getting broken down far, far too easily. We're losing scores from stoppages. So that's the contest that you were talking about before. And
Hmm.
any team losing contest by 40 contested possessions, they've generally suffered a pretty heavy defeat. It's just terrible. But when you get outside of the contest, we're in no man's land. Like, and again, headless chook kind of stuff. There was examples on the weekend where players probably thought that they were doing the right thing by going to help a man in the air, such as the Radaglia spoil on Bergman, for example. He thought he was doing the right thing, but just the lack of awareness means that our positioning is fucked, like, from that point on, and that happens up the field as well. Our positioning, like, for a supposed front half footy team, teams are just getting the ball out of their defensive line way too fucking easily, and we know that we've been typically fairly, like, we've given up some fairly easy transition goals, but ultimately it hasn't affected us to this degree. I don't feel in a little bit. Probably the last time was 2022 when we probably had a better reason, and that was that we across the year we had upwards of 20 surgeries in season, so we were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel team wise. But like, and because like you said earlier, our defense is copping it at the moment, and again, because that kind of goes hand in hand with the recruitment, they're all getting bundled in. But I feel that it's obviously affected up the field, like, but just the way, if we do manage to get it in our forward line at the moment, it's getting taken out far too easily. And surprisingly enough, we're missing one key cog, obviously, in Sam Pepper, but
Willie Rioli's been missing for a month now too. That's a big,
and his pressure
just
lifted.
Well, it's just like that's one less real live wire for the opposition defense to have to be accountable for. So that's just, it's just a very vanilla forward line in the sense of just there's not much of anything going on apart from just try to find a target and hope, if it comes to ground at someone. But the guys that were doing that work aren't there, like Pal Pepper and Rioli, and we just haven't found much else down there yet.
Part of that vanilla comment that you just made is the fact that we've still implemented a couple of defensive forwards in DBJ and Jed McEntee, but as a result of that, we lack creativity in our forward line, which is probably a separate note. But like, it's not working from a defensive point of view.
Yeah.
Because we know that when our forward line pressure is up to standard, that everything just falls in line behind that midfield defense, and then our actual true defensive line don't look as inept as what they're made to look at the moment. So we're missing one of our biggest barometers across the whole side in Sam Pepper, who is that beacon for that defensive pressure. But in selection, they probably feel like they've substituted that with McEntee, DBJ, maybe Willie, but I mean, a lot of people probably still see Willie as more of a creative, dynamic forward.
I'm more meant just that the
pressure.
His pressure is just
and a bit of
being around the ball.
Too.
Yeah.
So for mine, I'm not like, and we seemingly in our defensive line are getting hemmed in so heavily, and teams are putting utmost pressure on us and pushing right up in our faces. And and that's just something that we seemingly have been stubborn to implement ourselves. We like, you get a better idea when you're there at the ground, but it's very obvious watching it on TV. For a long time, we've given the opposition that possession out of the defensive goal square to then kick it at the junction of 50 and the boundary, so on that halfback flank for the opposition. And it's more or less a trap, in my opinion, because their only real option from there is to go down the line and then it gets knocked out. That's how I feel. That's the thinking behind that. But at the moment, like, that's not working. And again, it's that stubbornness to go, all right, that trap that has worked for us on a large number of occasions is just not working anymore. And teams are getting creative with us, and we're just not putting enough pressure on from a positional point of view. And then when you add the lack of effort on top of that, It's just getting waltzed out way too easily. And all of a sudden, midfield chasing tail because they're out of position or they lack a bit of defensive effort, particularly at the moment. And before you know it, Sava Radicalizia is crashing into the back of Miles Bergman. Alia's getting outmarked by Cam Rayner, who is a strong medium forward, but
but when Alia's confident and in position, he's not going to get outmarked by Cam Rayner. It's just not, I know Alia's game is intercept, but I've seen him.
Alia as well.
Yeah, I've seen him battle in one-on-ones really well and across his first couple of years here, and he looks unsure of himself, which we know he was an All-Australian defender in his first year here, so it's not like he, it's just that kind of, as he said, sums it up, says it all. Sorry, I was taking a water break there and then just butted in. It's I guess that leads to everything, the kind of fallout afterwards, which is just something we have to touch on because it is just such a major part.
Absolutely. Yeah, people listening will want to, want us not to gloss over it.
Yeah, and it's a major part of it. And it is probably it's unfortunately, I've always said, and you and I are pretty much on the same page of this. Like, we don't like to get into the name calling and all that stuff, but we just don't think it's healthy, both for our own mental health, to get that worked up and angry about it. We're worked up and angry in a different way. We just want to see our club better and performing better. Not part of these conversations. We just don't like seeing, being dragged through the mud, both by media and then by fans, and then obviously the opposition fans just they eat this up. But the emotions behind a lot of the commentary and stuff like that is understandable. I'm pretty angry and hurt by it all. The fact that we're just back here again, it's very cyclical that we have a result like this where it's no effort, as you kind of called them, chickens with their heads cut off running around, and it feels like the same set of emotions that we were, after 2021 or after 2019 or after 27. Like, it's just a cyclical thing now. And it is, I've every time we sign Ken back up, I take the tack that, well, I'm just going to, I'm going to keep, it's always going to be the way I go. I'll go forward supporting Port, and that's the way I'll be. And I'll do it this weekend, if Ken's at the helm or not, whatever. I will go into the game hoping we win and all that stuff. But my thing about it, and you've got a lot of people saying, if Ken was, a decent man, he'd fall on his sword. It's like, no, don't. He has a job. He's going to, and if he's just, whether it's pride or misplaced pride, whatever you may think of it, I just don't like people calling someone that's just trying to do their job. And, if he will know the time to walk away, as Kane said, and I know plenty of people have thoughts about what he's saying as well. But my opinion is it is time for a change, but it's such a rock and a hard place because I feel you get a lot of people saying, let Josh Carr take over and see what he can do. Well, the club's in such a low ebb now that he could just take over and struggle. And then people go, well, that's the reason that we don't need Josh Carr. And then, so it's just like, well, then do you give Ken until the end of the year and then let Carr take over at the end of the year? And then maybe Carr has an average year next year. And then people now, because the narrative has turned that Carr is useless as well.
And then the drums start beating again.
Yeah. And it's just like, so it's a rock and a hard place. It is a situation, unfortunately, it's a lot more of it's more on the board for me, which again, I'm not going to get into the name calling stuff of it. It's just, we knew this was going to come as soon as a period like this would happen this year. And it's just like the board set themselves up for failure a lot more than that they should have realized. I mean, they probably did know that this would come, but it's such a delicate balancing act to try and go into a season with this like hope for, it's like 95%, like premierships are so hard to win anytime. And success is so hard to find anytime in football or in any sport around the world. And when you add in this kind of backstory that we had going into this season, it's just the timing of the contract last year, maybe whatever. These are all things that have happened in the past. But I'm at the point where whatever happens, I'll be. I don't know what I want to see happen now because.
It's tough.
It's I tweeted on the night that it's time, and that's because I do believe it's time. But that's not me saying
time.
It's time. I don't want to get too much into the nitty gritty of the commentary back and forth, but it is just ugly to see us talked about in the media where you've got whether it Mark Robert, and then you've got this. I think what sucks more is the I've had some people talk about the gaslighting of the fans and stuff like that, which I don't like. I do take a bit of issue with how the club handles that because I know what they're trying to do and just try to make it, inside our four walls. We don't listen to this stuff. But Port Adelaide does, as we were talking about Port Adelaide traditions, there was a tradition a long time ago of the Port team being a little bit more accountable to the fans and,
Going back to the club.
Going back to the club.
Is that what you're meaning?
Yeah, rain, hail, or shine. Not that you can do that these days, but at least, with a fan base as parochial and as passionate as they are, you've got to have a little bit more tact in how you treat them in the media and whatnot. So it is kind of frustrating. And there's been anything so much this week. It's more, I guess, I think the issue this week is they think the club is, putting the feelers out to the apologists in the media or whatever, which I don't, there is reasons that Gerard Whateley and stuff, they do back him up because my contention's always been Ken is a good coach. He may not be a great coach. He may not be a premiership winning head coach. I think he's probably a fantastic assistant, like one of the best assistants you could ask for. He does have a premiership as an assistant. We do this stuff in the NFL sometimes. There's guys that are offensive play callers that go off and that have had tremendous success, and then they go off to get a head coaching job, and they're fucking terrible. And then they go back to being a defensive coach or a linesman coach or a quarterback's coach, and they do a great job again. Some people are just made for the intricacies of it, and I think Ken's gotten close to the sun, just hasn't quite got there, and then it's just fallen away, and it is what it is now. It is a bit of a rambling thing because I'm trying to get so many thoughts out there while trying to be delicate with it as well. But yeah, my opinion is it's time, and I've had that opinion probably at times. At the end of 2021, I wouldn't have minded if they'd made a change then. But again, I don't lose my mind when they don't. It's just like I just go with it. But I think at the end of 2018, I remember my dad arguing because I walked into the office one day when I was working with my family like 6 years ago. And I'd come back, like my parents are seeing me for the first time after coming back from a Port game. And I think they must have lost because they walked in. Oh, yeah, my parents being Crows fans kind of do the snarky, like, oh, you enjoy the footy last night, David? I think I walked in and just said I think I walked in and said he's got to fucking go. And obviously my parents don't like it when I swear, and then got angry at me and had an argument with me. But so I've done this in my personal life over the years, and I just try to take a bit more tact with it because I actually found it over the last 6 years developing my mental health with football is like you've got to just not get so angry, and then you can have a mature discussion about it. But I have had that thought at times, but then we've had those little periods of success, those little tastes, and it's made it difficult in the discussions the past few years because we did get close. We did get very close in 2020. Obviously didn't make the grand final, but a tough finals loss. 2021 was a stark one. 2022 was probably the time, if not 2021, when you come towards the end of that year. He's only got the year left on the contract. You go, well, maybe that's just the time. Felt like the time, but then the development of the midfield over the past year has made it a little bit interesting as well. But then who is the mastermind behind that? Depends who you ask on social media. So that's me saying I can understand why it's been so difficult for the club, but sometimes a board has to make the tough decisions, and that's what Port boards over the years have made. I'll finish on it before I let you take over. John Cales said famously years ago, I can't remember where he said it or what interview it was. He said coaches of 8-9 years, and then he thinks coaches time span is 8-9 years. Then the message gets stale, and then you've got to let it go. And Ken's obviously at 12 years now. And we even look at the guys like Zach Butters and Connor Rosie. They're six years into their sixth year, I think, now. So they're actually not young anymore in that messaging. So maybe that is a part of it, that the messaging for those guys, now that they've come through and gotten their midfield time, as much as I think they still love Ken, and a lot of the guys still love Ken, subconsciously the message has gotten a bit stale. And sorry, one more thing to finish. I brought it up last week when Tom Jonas was talking about the authoritarian style that happened when Ken took over. It just doesn't feel like that's the way it is anymore. Maybe the players are enjoying it too much off the field, and it's not translating. Whereas
yeah,
To remind anyone that didn't listen to that bit last week, Jonas said that when Ken took over back in 2012, he instilled a very authoritarian mind, and he basically said footy wasn't too much fun off the field, but because we started winning and we hadn't won much for years, that it made it fun and it really kind of changed the culture of the club. So that's my way of saying I think there is a culture change needed, and unfortunately, as they say in all sports, you can't fire all the players. The easiest thing you can do is change the coach, and that's why they do it a lot. That's why they do it a lot in world sports, is they change the coach more often than anything else, because that's the one thing you can change and find immediate success sometimes.
Yeah. There's obviously a lot to consider in your approach to speaking on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand what you're saying in regards to rambling, because there's so many aspects to it. But thank you for your candidness in trying to divulge, because I mean, my head's a clusterfuck with it all as well. Obviously, people of whatever proclivities they have are going to come at it from all different angles, and I've admitted on this show that I generally lean to the apologist side of things as well. I mean, I don't really know where to start. I guess I'll just preface it by saying that I'm okay with change. We've said it on this podcast before. I'm okay with change. And I'll leave that to one side. But in my opinion, and this is my opinion, I think Ken Hinckley is a fantastic person. What I don't like and I disagree with are comments to the effect that he bent the club over a barrel in 2017 to try and get a better deal for himself. He's only in it for the money. He's a fraud is it's an exaggerated word that people use because they don't believe that we'll win a premiership under him, and he's only keeping a seat warm until the club. I don't agree with any of that kind of terminology. Just on the coaching thing in 2017, we love it when players choose to exercise their free agency rights and come to our club. But when it comes to a coach trying to, and I don't even necessarily think it was get a better deal. I think it was the tenure that Ken wanted more so than the money. Yeah. Because I genuinely believe that Ken, loves this club, which is interesting for a Victorian to come over and do that. Every step of the way through his coaching tenure, nothing has told me any different, in my opinion. I think he cares for the club. I think he cares for the players. I think he cares about the history. And like you said, if he would fall on his sword if he really that's crap. I agree with you. Like he shouldn't fall on any sword, because
that's the board's decision to make for me. Like, the board that's where I come back to it. I have more issues with the board.
They're complicit in a lot of the pressure that has been placed on Ken, because it wasn't Ken's idea. I don't think it was. I don't know that for sure, but I don't think it was Ken's idea to come out after 2020 and say that we're going to win 3 premierships in 5 years.
No. I imagine Ken was pissed, to be honest. Not that
perhaps it's just
he wants to, but
it's very copy and paste from another successful club in the league, obviously. And it's good to have ambition, but it doesn't need to be said. So I do think, I agree with you. I think Ken's a good coach. He hasn't proven he's a great coach. And this is the objectivity that people like Gerard Whateley and co get to look at it from the outside. Is, you haven't had it that bad. Whereas like a lot of this pressure that you can draw similarities to the Port Adelaide Football Club in regards to their coach is from clubs who are languishing on the bottom of the ladder consistently. And we never have. You know, we've been a mid-table team or we've been a top 4 team, or top 5. So like that, I think that's where that lack of emotion interstate and what have you, that can, you go, well, you've actually been competitive for a lot of the decade that you're complaining about, but we're the Port Adelaide Football Club and our supporters, our motto is that we exist to win premierships, which is all well and good. It's fantastic. It sounds great. It's great. It's an obvious notion.
Yeah,
like
every club does. So I would assume
every club exists to win premierships, but
I like that we wear it on our sleeve. That's what the whole Port Adelaide thing is we like. Our expectation is worn on our sleeve because that's what we have been. And but it is the AFL, which is completely different to where we've come from. But we should still try to excel. That's what the club's always going to try to do.
And I think that falls into where people are saying, well, we used to be ruthless and whatnot, and we've lost that a little bit. And yes, we're not. We're not in the SANFL anymore, and it is extremely harder. But ultimately, it's been a long time. It's been a very long time since we last tasted that success. And unfortunately, no matter how good your home and away record is, and it's fantastic, and I love that we have been a competitive side. And I mean, to say that on the back of what happened on Saturday is obviously, again, galling just as much as the game was. But I love that we have been competitive. We've had some fantastic wins to go along with some absolutely fucking terrible losses. Again, as the fan of the football club, you can exaggerate the highs and you can exaggerate the lows just as much as any other fan of any other club can do. But I do believe, and I was comfortable with the fact that if the board wanted to wait until after the finals and they moved Ken on, like I wasn't going to be crying any tears. Like I think that Ken has changed the culture by and large for the better. Unfortunately, that culture seemingly has only gone far enough to get us to that we're competitive level, or in a good year, we can challenge for a preliminary final. Unfortunately, it hasn't delivered the goods. So there's no bigger person. There's no person under any more pressure than Ken at the moment. And just going back on other coaches historically who've had this kind of pressure, they have been languishing at the bottom. Like no coach has ever A, fallen on their sword, or B, been sacked while they've been sitting in the top 8. So look, again, in my opinion, taking emotion out of it, I think it's a bit silly to make any wholesale changes while you're still sitting where you are. And I completely understand that a lot of people would disagree with that. The two most recent examples of coaches more or less falling on their sword were Leon Cameron and Nathan Buckley, but their clubs were languishing at the bottom of the ladder. And I think they were both in their last years of their contracts. Again, I might be wrong. That's just where my memory best serves me. So again, a lot of thoughts to consider and trying to put them in a astute manner and I don't have to please everyone. And a lot of what I've said, I know that a lot of people will disagree with.
I think if you read between the lines,
opinion.
If you actually listen to what Jamie's saying, it's all very, astute and mature and positive and both critical, but just constructively critical. So yeah,
it's kind of the basis of where we kind of sit, and the basis of the podcast is like there's a lot of shit, like there's a lot of crap that gets put out there, and some of which on profiles that on social media that aren't personal profiles, so it's very easy to sit behind illustration of a character or some shit like that and say all this kind of bullshit. And people are hurting. I understand people are hurting because we want the ultimate success, and it's been 20 years since we've tasted it. And that just historically, it just doesn't sit well. I don't like it, but again, I'm a nuffy who has never played any good club football. Like, I take stock in what the professionals are talking about. And by professionals, I don't necessarily mean journos. I mean people who've played the game at the highest level and people who've coached the game at the highest level. And again, the whole like Hinkley protection racket thing, I don't buy into. I think that's it's getting conspiracy theory levels. I think what it is in actual fact is, again, like my comments with Jared Waitley, is other people who can actually look at things without emotion, because they're not Port Adelaide people. Now, the kind of the first things that I wrote down after the game is that this is a big week for Connor Rosie, because he's the captain, and Warren Treadray, because he's obviously the member elect, and he's probably one Port Adelaide person who is going against a lot of what I'm saying. But he's the member elect. You and I both voted for him. He's a voice to represent the members, and I thought that he spoke pretty well on 5AA yesterday, and I don't like the media pylon. I think is an opportunistic moment for people like Craig Hutchison and et al. To just kind of go, oh, the club's divided. Look, Warren Treadray saying this stuff. It caused a phone call from blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't think what Warren Treadray has said or the manner in which he's responded to callers calling out, like,
he's
because he wasn't absolutely, I don't know what the right word is, but he wasn't absolutely having a go at a caller who had an opinion of their own, and he said, "Yep, good call." Like, he's in the position he's in for a reason, and albeit he is just one person on a board of directors, so he doesn't have as much influence as what a lot of people probably hope he does. But at the end of the day, all we can hope for is that he is representing the members as a whole in the right way behind closed doors. And that
certainly knowing what he knows, why he won the vote. He knows that a fair bit of it was that we want. And that's why while I haven't agreed with how he's gone about some things across the years, I gave him the vote because I wanted to have, and I think you're in a similar train of thought, that you want him to bring that voice of difference to, while I've been happy at times over the years.
It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, because I do have my criticism. Again, my criticism's a lot more, and I know there's a lot of fans out there that are like this as well. A lot of my criticisms are more for the board and the likes of Kosh. And it's not like I hate Kosh or anything like that either. It's just I do have criticisms with how we've handled things across the years. Like you said, just maybe we should have waited till the end of last year for the contract decision. I understand from an objective point of view why they felt they needed to move on it, because they thought it was probably going to be a distraction maybe or whatever. And ultimately, it just proved that it didn't really matter in finals. We were cooked last year. But, so, Treadray's, him. That was, I wake up in the morning and see this stuff from overnight, because Talkback Radio starts around, now, and it's midnight here. It just ticked past it. So I'm often asleep at this time. And so I wake up and see, and I saw club divided, club great, on radio, and I'm looking for what he said, and everything just kept on being like him saying, "Oh, good call." I'm like, wait, was that it? Like, come on. So yeah, it
Yeah.
is the media, and yeah, Warren Treader is often. I think they often want him to be. The media now knows his role from his untenable comments last year. They look for it. So as soon as he says anything like that, I think the media just jumps on it and goes, "Oh, club divided," and maybe
They're
try.
loving it. They're
Yeah.
absolutely loving it.
Oh,
Like I said, just as much as
it's clickbait. Yeah.
yeah, just as much as they were when we were at our darkest period in time in 11 and 12, 2011 and 2012. That is, they love it. They love it. Any piece of drama, particularly from interstate, being obviously Vic centric, and maybe that's a biased comment from myself.
They were Port fans. We can do
Absolutely
that.
love it. Yeah, fuck it. Yeah.
And particularly, Port does have a unique thing in that because we were an established club that entered the competition, but sometimes there is that interstate thing that they want to push down and push that down, and so they want to belittle the club at times, I think, too. And maybe not so much the media, it's more probably fans, actually. But there is a little bit of that tall poppy with Port Adelaide a little bit at times where, while the history is always acknowledged at the best of times, when things are going badly, they take every chance to push down on it to try to belittle the club as well. So, yeah. Probably the last thing I'll finish up on. Anything else you want to say in a second as well, go for it. But the booing thing was obviously, it's an uncouth look. I am not generally a booer myself. I probably was when I was younger, but I just kind of refrain from that these days. I'll boo umpires. That's probably about it, actually. That's still where I'll let go a little bit just because that's after a few beers as well. But I think it's the performance was unfortunate, and I think that's where some of the media stuff against fans has happened, like the Waitleys and some of the others. I can't remember who else, but they were kind of calling the fans out, and I think that's why the fans have gotten a bit more up in arms. And I'm probably 50-50, and I think the fans have a right to express complete disappointment. And sometimes that is a tale as old as time across sports across the world. You'll see teams boot off at halftime in a soccer game if they've getting completely. Fans are a pretty good barometer of what a club is, and you can't have your fans. I remember being a part of a standing ovation when we kicked 8 goals against Geelong to get a lead against them in 2022 when we weren't, didn't even make finals. The fans stood up and gave a standing ovation at that game because they recognised the effort,
appreciated what they saw. Yeah.
So you can't have that. It's kind of like the Marilyn Monroe, like you can't have me at my best if you can't handle me at my worst.
Yeah.
So, like the fans, yes, it's a little bit uncouth and quite. It's a dark look, but the club is in a unique position with Ken. Him having been here 12 years, all the records about games coached without making a grand final. This particular experience we're having right now with Ken and the club and everything is unforeseen in AFL footy and top level footy in Australia, really. So we've kind of just got to take it as it comes, and I don't blame that. Like, I just want to give the fans some, like, that we do understand. Like, yes, I wouldn't be, like, whether I'd be a part of it, I don't know. If I'd been 6 beers deep, maybe I would have let the little one go. I don't know, and I wouldn't have even been against Ken. I would have just been booing everything. It's to me, you're booing the entire situation. You're just going, this is fucked. And that's what I'm expressing my emotions for. I'm expressing right now. I just went and saw Bad Boys 2 a few hours ago, and there's a few moments when the characters are talking to each other.
You saw Bad Boys, didn't you?
Oh yeah, no, I did. Yeah, I was talking to you about Bad Boys 2, but yeah, I saw Bad Boys, Ride or Die, which my wife and I have had this discussion that we think the fourth one should have been Bad Boys for Life, and you could stylize it with the 4, like Ride or Die should have been the name of the third one. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But they were talking, there are a few moments of comedy when they're arguing, and they're talking about we're expressing. He's expressing right now, Mike. That's what the fans are doing. They was expressing. I don't think, a lot of it would have been about Ken, but there's an entire unsavory feeling around what's happening at the club at the moment. That's what a lot of it's just expressing. That summed it up. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes you need to have that, and whether the board does anything about it, but that's a look the board doesn't want to have. It's kind of like protest. Like I'm a big believer in protest and civil protest and stuff like that. And people go, well, that doesn't achieve anything, whatnot. But it's just like gets eyes on it. It's an ugly look in theory, gets eyes on a situation. And often, protests are often pretty peaceful until other unsavory forces like the police get involved.
Authorities
Yeah.
get involved. Yeah.
So that's a fan's form. That's a fan's form of civil protest is booing. And if it doesn't get ugly and things aren't getting thrown or people aren't getting hurt, like that's like unfortunately I don't like that a club's a part of that at the moment. But I just wanted to give some credence to that we do understand that pain, and certainly I don't like some aspects of the fan base being gaslit to be kind of the other when we are. It's a lot of members that are
the club.
There is a lot of members that are a part of that. And
I think that's distasteful. Because that's the media's love affair with pitting one person against the other, and that's apparently what they're trying to do at the moment. Whether it's to deflect from the issue at hand or not, or whatever theory you want to do, and I'm not a booer any further than the pantomime boo. When a player kind of returns to the stomping ground and you give a little kind of comedic pantomime boo, or
Troy Chaplin,
boo the umpires or whatnot, but it's all in jest. But I think the obvious difference with what happened on Saturday was it was quite personal and pointed, and that's quite palpable. Like it takes you aback a little bit, and like I didn't partake. Obviously, off the back of my comments, many could imagine that I didn't, because energy better spent, in my opinion. And I think, just going back to what I was saying,
laughing at your child, apparently. So
and
providing some much needed.
That we kicked a goal after 45 minutes or whatever it fucking was, and that we laid a tackle, some shit like that. But and I think that it's because there's a lot of people who've concocted this opinion that Ken literally is just there in it for himself, and he's just there to for a paycheck, which, again, like I said, I don't agree with, and I don't believe that for a second that's what it is. Like, our club, if that was actually the case, our club, in my opinion, would be in a much worse position. Like, that's, if you think, like, and then the issue we face is that there are a lot of fence sitters, and they're being drawn into that kind of atmosphere of belief, and everyone's entitled to their opinion and whatnot. Like, I know that I'm not going to change a lot of people's opinions, but I have a platform to express my opinion. And do I think that it's time for change? Probably. Do I think that now that we have signed him, and now that we still are in the 8 for the time being, do I think that we should do it right now? No. Again, I know a lot of people will disagree with that, but every coach that's been sacked in recent times, like I said, it's because they're sitting smack bang on the bottom of the ladder, and they have done for a consistent period of time. And the 2 examples that I gave of coaches who did fall on their sword, if you want to put it that way, were languishing at the bottom of the ladder and in the last year of their contract. So, like, something I forgot to say before was that a comment was made on Twitter by a gentleman named Philip Downs, who's just a punter like you and I, and he said and I've brought it up on the podcast before, he said that the club wants Ken to have their Alan Scott, Mark Williams moment, where he gets to sit on the dais and say, like, you were all wrong. And I actually do believe that there's some truth in that. And I think for all the good that Ken has done in particular portions of our club, I think the club desperately wants him to win that premiership, to cap off the multitude of positives that he has brought along with him. So maybe, and maybe another club would have called time a bit earlier. We haven't. It's hindsight may say that was the wrong decision, and the law, the body of evidence is by and large there, is that we have an issue when it comes to big games and whatnot. But we have an opportunity to fix it, and until we don't, we have to continue to get better, just as the man himself said in his press conference. Until the moment that we have absolutely no chance, then we have to keep trying to get better. And at the moment, look, whether you like it or not, and whether you think he'll do it or not, that's just how it is. That's just how it is. And I hope, and I think similar to you, while when there's been opportunities to either re-sign him or let him go, and we've chosen to re-sign him, it's kind of been I don't know if I necessarily agree with it, but hey, prove me wrong. And that's where I'm at the moment, is I don't expect to win the premiership this year, but I think we can. A lot has to go right, obviously. A lot has to go right. From this point in time, a lot has to go right. And I forget what my other point was, because I'm filled with emotion and Buffalo Trace Kentucky bourbon. But I think I think if I keep talking, it'll probably just be a revolving door of comments and opinions. But do I believe Ken is a bad person holding the club to ransom? No. Do I think the board has been complicit in a lot of what's going on? Yes. And do I think that we should or will sack him or him resign? No. Right now, no.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things that I just don't think much else changes this year, regardless of who you put in place. You're just giving Josh Carr a test run, which, again, if it happened, I wouldn't be against it. I'd be like, well, then this is a chance for that, and then we go into a proper coaching search in the off season, which
it would be unprecedented.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of in a similar vein. If that's the hard call that they want to make, because you and I are members, this is what we pay them to do. Yeah. And whether you like the decisions or not, we want to support our club. And if they do decide to make that call, I would be fucking surprised. But yeah, I would thank Ken for the fact that he's managed to attract and keep a lot of players and changed our fortunes more so in the past. We've just kind of continued on that it's just been a level,
a plateau for a long time, which is what when you reset your expectations, then it can feel like it's lower than what it is. If we keep going, we'll, as you said, revolving door, and we need to get onto some stuff so we can get the podcast wrapped up at some point in the next 24 hours. All right, so rounding back to the game, we can get into segments. So it's going to be
just before that. Can I? Can I just list off my apologist bullshit?
Oh,
just to give people who want to listen for some apologist bullshit and maybe a silver lining or what, however you want to phrase it. Just I'll list them off. There's a Twitter page. I believe he's a Melbourne supporter. Again, he's called he's a faceless page, but fairly balanced. He's called the Footy Degenerate, but he listed the amount of players playing on the weekend who were 22 and under, and Melbourne had 10, and that was more the point that he was trying to make. But Port Adelaide had 7, which was out of the round just gone. That was up the higher end of 22 and under players. So something to consider, and maybe something that is being overlooked in the criticism of our team right now. As Ken Hinckley said, we have in fact played 3 of last year's preliminary finalists in the last 3 games. Whether they've been, I believe that GWS in particular were gettable because their run of form hasn't been that great. But at the end of the day, when we did our preview for that game, we didn't expect their team to be as strong as what it actually ended up being. So are we as good as the last year's preliminary finalists? We've lost to all 4 of last year's preliminary finalists now. So are we that good? No, but that's the fact. When Mark Rasciuto is backing you up in commentary and saying that you get in the rough end of the stick a lot of the time, that shit's fucked from a game's point of view. When he's questioning a lot of 50-meter penalties and free kicks or lack
there was a
thereof
few
throughout the game.
Yeah.
When Mark Rasciuto is audibly confused and befuddled at, that the game, I think he was actually saying, you just know it's not your day when shit like stuff like this is happening. So I think that's a key contributor because, Mark Rasciuto kind of loves a snarky comment, even when he's doing our games. AFL X score. I don't know if you've had a look at this.
I didn't actually look at it this week. No,
I totally forgot about it. But Brisbane outscored their expected score by 40 points.
Jesus Christ.
So, and that's where kind of,
and where was ours just about where
we underscored by a goal.
Okay, so that's a 46-point turnaround.
The expected margin was 5 goals.
Which is still it's a problem.
When you break that down quarter by quarter, that's a much more manageable. Maybe if we'd been within a couple of goals. Expected score is pie in the sky, so to speak. But if things happen a bit truer,
it's a good efficiency
it's
number.
It's not as dire as what it seems.
Yeah, which I guess, unfortunately, I think expected score is a symptom of us letting it get out so easy. But again, they are taking advantage. They're being very clinical.
At the game, I think it was Hugh McCluggage. He just got one deep in the pocket and whacked it on the boot, and it went right through. And I said to my dad, it's Harlem Globetrotters type stuff now. And because they'd already built that lead, it's just amazing what freedom within your game can allow you to do when there's no pressure on you whatsoever because you're fucking 6 goals, 7 goals, 8 goals up already. Yeah. Just some of the shit that you can pull out of your ass when you're that far in front. So I totally forgot. Again, apologist bullshit segment. That was amazing. 40 points to outscore your expected score by 40. That was kicking him from
I haven't 50. seen one like that.
Had a blinder. Fucking Joe Danaher was even kicking him from 50 minutes.
Danaher had one goal that was
shit's fucked.
Yeah, one of his goals is the fucking flipper from Crackerjack when he just moves it both ways.
Willie Rioli, Sam Powell-Pepper, Travis Boak, Charlie Dixon, and Ryan Burton were out. Now, I will admit that Dixon was dropped on form. Burton would have been dropped on form if it wasn't for an injury, I believe. The thing that I would counter that with is, I've said it quite a few times, is senior leadership is seriously undervalued in sport, and particularly AFL, which we're talking about. Again, SPP, he's not going to be back all year, so we have to cover him. But again, we weren't, our best 22 wasn't out on the ground, and granted, neither was Brisbane's because they have fucking 100 ACL sitting out. Yeah. The last point I want to make is that at this very exact point in time last year, GWS and Carlton were sitting at 14th and 15th on the ladder. So it was actually, the ladder was actually quite even. The very top was separated, but the ladder was actually quite even. And I mean, they ended up making fucking preliminary finals. So it just goes to show that at this point in time, the ladder was still quite even last year. But After round 15, 2023, GWS and Carlton were 14th and 15th on the ladder. So that finishes off my apologist bullshit segment that I've just kind of shoehorned in here, because at the end of the day, much like Connor Rosie said in his interview with the Advertiser, nothing is as bad as it ever seems, but nothing is as good as it ever seems. It generally lies somewhere in the middle, maybe a little less than middle and more to the bad end in this particular moment in time. But there are there's always some extenuating circumstances to any issue, really. So I just, and we I don't know. We need to keep people hopeful a little bit. I kind of feel responsible for that. So there's some pretty. I think some pretty. Some of those are a bit, wishy washy. But at the end of the day,
there is always context
when you consider some of those. We just like I said in my comments before, we have to get a lot right now.
Yeah, no, we do. And that's what the weekend needs to be. It needs to be transformative in some way. Some people want it to be a coaching change. And again, if it happened, then that would be the board making a decision and we run with it. But then if it's not going to be that, then it needs to be transformative in a proper attitude shift and a hard look on, within the, video rooms and training track and everything as to what can be immediately changed. Because we've seen the form drop precipitously, so it would be nice to see it go the other way for a change. I can actually see us improve drastically, because we have dropped off quite drastically considering.
Funny that we should play St Kilda, because I think it was last year we had that, the untenable, and then we beat Sydney, luckily, and then I think we went to Melbourne and played St Kilda while they were in decent form, and we beat them in a hard-fought game. And was it 2022 or 2021 when we had like no forward line and we went to Marvel?
It was 2021,
snatched a win from St Kilda. So
I
don't know. Maybe, hopefully that's a good sign. But I'm trying to keep sane here.
Yeah, exactly. We can't. Yeah, we just got to hope. We are sitting still inside the top 8, and if we can at least steady the ship in the next couple of weeks and get a couple of wins, in what are still tough games upcoming. But we're certainly not a bad team. We're just not very good at the moment either. We're just, again, ladder doesn't lie very often, and we're sitting in 8th with a percentage that has dropped a bit over the last few weeks. So it's just what it is.
We're in a rut.
Yeah, exactly. So Spotlight, you get to go first. Spotlighting you good, which I know it's probably a tough one to find. A lot of the
very tough, very tough. Emotionally, very tough, particularly immediately after the game and over the weekend.
There was a point in the weekend where I almost texted you and said, "We're not doing any of the fucking segments this week."
So I had the thought myself. I was like, the whole episode's being reserved for criticism and hate.
I was like, no, we need to do it for the end of the year at least, so we've got like a step, even if it's all shit out of this week. But
Spotlight can go at the wayside. Fucking no one's getting a Sweeney. No, Anyway, my spotlight, and to put a positive light, usually, people who haven't had many runs of games or they're sub or whatnot, they're generally not in contention in the week. But couldn't go past Logan Evans. Like, it's it was his debut game, and the eye test, particularly at the game, would say, like, I wrote on Twitter during the game or near the end of the game that, and I'll quote, "The fact that a debutant is close to our best on ground is an absolute indictment on this whole fucking team." Now, obviously, very emotion-filled tweet, that one.
Yeah.
Got a little bit of traction, which I was, gave me a lot of dopamine, which was good. Thank you for that, everyone. But the eye test and vibes would, for a debutant to put in such a good effort. And like,
he's only 18 or something like that as well, right?
Yeah. So he was unfortunately missed out in his draft year, which I think was last year. So obviously, we had our eye on him since then, and I had no fucking idea who he was coming into the mid-season draft. But obviously, the club and the list management team did, for all the criticism that we're now getting angled at recruitment.
How the turntables, huh?
I guess they have done a lot right. Historically, but Logan Evans came in, put in a great amount of effort, didn't give up. He ran both ways.
Mhm.
A few lapses in composure, which I absolutely forgive a first gamer in doing so, but
Mhm.
I think the positives heavily outweighed the negatives for him in his debut game. And I wish him all the best. And if he's going to contribute from a defensive point of view and is actually going to defend as a defender, then yeah, fuck yeah, I'm on board for that. So yeah, had to give Evans a shout out for sure. And look, that won't be the last time he's chatted about in this podcast, particularly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I only don't have him because I did go with that. Like it was just his first game, but I almost went with him too. So I'm glad you did because it gives him his flowers there. And it's certainly part like for especially for being in the spotlight and watching in a positive sense. He's one to watch going forward in that sense. We want to see what he
Yeah,
does
yeah,
from now
absolutely.
on, and yeah, it is really exciting to have potentially picked up a real gem in the mid-season draft, which has unearthed some real talent in this league. But yeah, to get 20 disposals and have a game like the way he did and contribute was really good. Mine is one that's probably I've been reasonably happy with how he's been going over the weeks, even though unfortunately it's probably maybe somewhat part of just how we've been traveling. But Kane Farrell, I guess maybe somewhat best of a bad bunch kind of thing, but had sorry, I'm just finding his numbers. 24 disposals at 91% efficiency, almost 500 meters gained, three score involvements. He had a few turnovers, which a lot of them the day did. But I just think he was one of those players coming into this year we were probably had a lot of hope for, but also didn't exactly know where he kind of fits still at times. But I think he's kind of finding his role. He's getting a lot more of the ball, and considering he had what ACL 2-3 years ago, it probably stunted his development for a little bit there. But I've been kind of happy enough with. I'm not exactly sure how we're using him yet, but and it's still again it's more a function of just the disconnect between lines I think at the moment. But just with him and what he does when he as much as what he's trying to do within the side, I've just been happy enough with how he's been going, and he's just the one that I picked this week as just someone that I wasn't unhappy with exactly. One of few, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot
I
of
did see
guys.
some criticism for him on
Yeah.
Twitter after, like during or after the game. Um, I think it was mainly due to emotion though.
Mm. I
And
think he's one of those.
where you kind of consider his bit like what his role is, like
Mm.
how you view that.
Yeah, I think again that's what I was trying to touch on is like I'm not exactly sure where his role is, but and he is one of those players because he is a little bit of flair, obviously that kick that we love of his and some of those things. Sometimes I think he can look like, when the game's going against you, I think he sometimes possibly looks like it's going past him as well, but I think he's still getting a lot of the ball and using it a lot more effectively than sometimes he's given credit for, I think, as well. It's just
Yeah,
I've just enjoyed he's had a bit of growth this year and probably given a little bit more. I'm a little bit more comfortable with where he's his role, like his position of being part of the side than I probably was. I've always loved him. I've just always been unsure of where he is, and I still aren't not
yeah,
exactly
that's fair.
100% on that. So, but and again, there wasn't too many. I wasn't going to pick any of the obviously Evans was probably would have picked him, but it was game one, so I went away from that. But I'm glad you did. But there wasn't too many others that I could really, and I almost would have picked Georgiades again, but I've done that for like 2 weeks, I think. So I just had to pick. I had to pick someone different. So yeah. All right. Watch list
Watch.
the whole team, or
Well, I haven't I've gone for like a combo, a
I
bit
like
similar
that.
to how you did Butters and Rosie a few weeks back or a few games back, but
Hmm.
I've gone for BZT and Asava.
Hmm.
Now I don't subscribe to the higher end of criticism for these two in particular. Obviously, I'm biased and look at Port Adelaide and all it entails with rose-colored glasses on. But it's more a watch list to see how the club uses them, what they do with them. now under the amount of pressure that we're faced. And I mean, Zerk Thatcher was subbed out on the weekend, which isn't always a good look. While I
Immediately,
think maybe we needed a bit more mongrel and a bit maybe more speed on the ground to try something. Like we tried something and that was at half time. So again, is that a plan B? I don't know.
I was just going to say that's immediately the week after we went and sent Asava down forward as well. So you've had the two defensive recruits be managed interestingly 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah. And I think I am not alone in this basket when I said I didn't expect Zerk Thatcher to be in our best 22 to start the season. Now, initially in the first, particularly third of the season, I was happily incorrect with that assessment and quite happy with how he was performing. We put him in some votes early on and he did some good jobs early on. Much like Asava, particularly in the month leading into the bye, I thought he was in some really good form for us. Now, the issue that we're facing, and I don't think that they're the main culprits for it, and that's why it's not necessarily a watch on them or their form or whatnot in particular. It's just how we treat them moving forward from this point in time. Because it's okay to admit that you've made a incorrect decision and maybe we are too tall and maybe one of them has to spend some time out of those two. I probably still think it's Zerk Thatcher, unfortunately, although he's probably more of a true defensive footballer rather than an athlete who is a footballer. So yeah, and by and large, I don't think Asava's form is as bad as what it appears. I do think that he needs to increase his awareness around his teammates in some critical moments. But I do also think that comes with calmness in knowing that your team is putting pressure on up the field, which isn't happening at the moment. So yeah, watch for me on both of them. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm not paid to. But something tells me that between now and the end of the season, one of them is going to get dropped.
Yeah, especially when you got guys like I think Mackenzie's fit at the moment, or has he been?
He's 1 to 2 weeks away with a hamstring.
Oh, is he? He's out. Yeah.
And we'll get back to the injury list later, which isn't great viewing.
Yeah. I don't know. Fleury, I know just the talk has been since he got back from some of the injuries, he just hasn't quite found the form. So, because I see that Fleury's name comes up a lot, but it's just like he hasn't, all reports are at the SANFL level, he just hasn't quite been the player that we remember him being. So,
it's an interesting one. Something's not right there.
Yeah.
And whether it's just he's not up to AFL standard anymore in the view of the coaches. And he just see out his contract playing in the SANFL.
They tried him on the wing.
Not sure either because
but I love Cleary, so I'd love to see him get a run.
It's not going to happen. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen though to trial him on a wing. I know that in the preseason, a lot of the reports were saying that he was there.
But with some of the cattle,
many people would probably think we're top heavy enough.
Yeah,
let alone putting a defender on the wing.
Yeah. Mine is again kind of a similar vein because it's just hard to find when you've got so many out of form, and it's not even that the players are out of form so much, just like just how we're structured. But it's again midfield focus, but it's more last few weeks finding the both the effect of both Willem Drew and Ollie Wines on the side, which I've loved. They're obviously in our top 10 for Player of the Year votes at the moment. We've both lauded them quite a bit this year, but they're just in these games where you really hope that they're kind of going to be and get a little bit more involved in it. And yeah, they were, but I'm just letting Ollie Wines had 5 contested, Drew had 4, and just not getting enough of it. Drew only had, I think, 15 disposals for the game total, 16. So Wines had 17. So those guys, I mean, I know Butters and Rosie had a fair bit of the ball. Farrell did as well as a few others, and HORNE-FRANCIS. But some of the better games we've played this year have seen them either one of them get a bit more of the ball and just it's again speaking more to how we're setting up around the ball and the contest. And we've said that it just seems like someone else is always waiting. Someone wants someone else to do the work. And,
that needs to be Wines on more occasions for me.
Yes,
yeah,
it does. And especially he has shown he's fit this year and has had some really good games. But then, when neither of them are really doing, I know Butters and HORNE-FRANCIS both were in the double digits for contested possession. So they often actually are. I think sometimes Butters, people forget that he gets the hard ball because you see him running so much, but he does actually get the hard ball a lot too. But
I think a lot of statistics, when you draw back and look at them, would surprise, a lot of people.
Yeah.
Based on their vibe call.
Yeah.
Sorry to. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's exactly what I was getting at. But it's just especially Drew when he's utilised at his best, and he's such a fix-all, and Wines particularly this year has been a big part of some of our best performances. So you just want to see a little bit more out of those. And it's not so much that I'm actually criticising them. It's usage really, and just the entire midfield structure again was really what was troubling me this week.
Usage,
yeah. It's
terrible.
just. And
what was our disposal? I haven't actually looked at it.
What was it?
Our disposal efficiency was like around 73%. It's just it's even more fucking frustrating, because eye test would say that we used the ball fucking terribly and kept handing it back to him.
Yeah. Then you look at them and go, they had just so many more possessions and still ran just above us. Then that's kind of the part of it. So it's just like we didn't. I think
the critical turnovers. Punished us severely.
Yes. Our turnover ratio was a lot better earlier in the year, and we have been burning the ball a lot more, and turnovers, clangers, all that kind of.
They mentioned in the telecast that stuff. Like, we've obviously been known now to use the corridor a lot more, and unfortunately, if you're turning the ball over there, it's quite compromising.
It's a beautiful. The other side just goes, holy shit, it's right there.
Yeah.
It's a very short distance to goal. It's right in front of us. Yeah. 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 God damn it. All right, goal of the week. I guess at least we did score 10 this week, so there's a few to pick from. I'll go first in this one. I had to just there was a few contenders, but I thought Finlayson's running open. It was nice to, I guess Finlayson's been a highlight of some of the negative aspects of the game with some of the efforts, but he's certainly not alone in that. So I'm not going to, again, not picking him on in too much there because there was a few, but his running goal is...
Finlayson in the right position. Leicester goes to ground. It allows Finlayson, who kept his feet, who has a bounce. He kicked a goal in the SANFL last week. He's desperately trying to find some form, and Jezza bounces one through for the opener.
Two bounce from the center wing, basically, to and he had a nice little tap and kind of gather to win the ball. It was a contest on the wing, so he had to win. Yeah. He won his own ball, got it clear, took a couple of bounces, and then ran in and kicked into an open goal. Kind of grubbed it through, but I don't mind that.
Gave a little tug of the jumper.
Yeah,
which was great.
Yeah.
But
he kicked one goal through in the SANFL last week. It was the way he moved, I think, that they thought, right, he's finding some form.
At that moment, you're like, cool, they're playing for the jumper.
Yeah. It would have been a lot nicer highlight had it been the result been far better, or even just competitive. But still had to give some plaudits to that. I like it. It's good to get a running goal, and particularly not someone that's we're used to doing that. It's usually a Butters or a HORNE-FRANCIS or someone like that, or Rosie that's getting those when we nominate those. But Finlayson running from the wing to give us some hope at the start of the game.
Good call. Really enjoyed that goal live, for sure. And I appreciate you leaving the next one for me, which is obviously Josh Sinn's first AFL goal, giving it a good snap. And
Marshall and Payne gets knocked to the side. A chance for Sinn. He was the late inclusion for the Eel boat, and Sinn. That's his first goal in the AFL for Josh Sinn.
he jumped into the Mbappe celebration. I thought it was going to be a fantastic day of football.
After 5 weeks, good snap on the left. It's going to be a good play. That's a soccer, isn't it?
But yeah, really happy for him. I don't dislike the celebration. I think, yeah, you see more of it across the league and stuff like that. And it was his first goal. So yeah, he's allowed to celebrate.
I think it shows some
loved
good.
It stayed in the contest and put it on the boot and got it through.
Shows some good confidence from him too, like that he's got a little bit of confidence in himself, which is what we want to see.
I think his overall game was hampered by the team's effort as a whole. He didn't feature a lot throughout the game, but I think over time, if he can stay in, that he'll contribute positively to our team.
Yeah, no, we both
moved to a wing as well, I think.
Yeah, and we both loved his start before he had the unfortunate shoulder collarbone injury. Was it shoulder or collarbone?
Collarbone.
Yeah. Same. But yeah, so it is good to see him back fit and obviously feeling pretty good about himself too, and certainly deserved to have a decent celebration for a decent goal. And it was fun. That was fun to watch. And unfortunately, just 2 goals from the early part of the game when we thought we were on for a decent day at least, or a competitive day. But yeah, still a nice little highlights package for me to put together tomorrow. I just won't watch any of the rest of it. I had the SWEENEY, and you get to roll first on this one.
Yeah, I kind of gave up on the SWEENEY. Look, I did write down a couple.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Butters' one-hand grab. It was, in late in the first quarter. Someone kicked it to him. I can't remember who slightly overshot it, but he dove back and stuck out the one paw and reeled it in, which was,
Well done.
First touch for HORNE-FRANCIS.
And he might have almost gave it up. Butters bravely going back with the flight. Plays with no fear. Back to HORNE-FRANCIS, stabs the pass to...
I don't know. Quite entertaining in the moment.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's a game. It's a game that didn't have too many highlights, really. So it's a little bit of a different one. It'll be interesting to see if we even get any votes. People will just be like, "Oh, fuck that." But we'll appreciate it if you
and
do
for anyone
vote.
Who does, thank you very much. Thanks for sticking around and and if clicking a button on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, and if you're listening, I do after the podcast gets posted, I put it on Instagram stories, which stays there for a day, but the Twitter ones I always leave open for 3 days. So if you're listening to this within a day or two of us recording and releasing, then you'll be able to see that the vote is still available on Twitter if you want to go on there and vote for the SWEENEY and the goal of the week. My SWEENEY is Jace Burgoyne having another. I've talked about it so much. I love his tackling technique.
Handed off to McKenna. Nice little flick back to reveal. Burgoyne with the tackle. He'll be rewarded.
So there you go. A great negating action. Can that inspire them now to just win more of the footy, chase down, hunt the opposition?
A team lifter from Jace Burgoyne. Can it result?
And he got
you have several times, yeah.
Well, he got that player. He's number 38. I think his name was Revel. He kicked one of the goals against us.
Yeah, right.
But he got him holding the ball in that first quarter. I think it's not long before Butters takes a grab from a Todd Marshall assist. I think it's probably for our 3rd goal in the quarter. But it was just before that. It was Jace Burgoyne kind of in midfield tackling Revel and just getting him. Just one of those ones where he just gets him, and then it's clear as day holding the ball. No arguments. He loses control of the ball and Burgoyne just again. It's his technique. He just wraps him around the shoulder and kind of brings him down. No sling action or anything like that. It's just pure muscle, which is incredible from a player that doesn't look like, but he just must have great core strength.
It's surprising.
So that's mine for the week, and I was very glad to find that one when I was going back through, because I was like, fucking hell, what am I going to do for this? But I saw that, I was like, yes, Jace, saving me.
it might be a good opportunity to say for anyone who's new to the podcast, and we just go, "Oh, that's a Sweeney," and
Oh
you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what's a fucking Sweeney? It's obviously based on the Sydney Sweeney meme from her featuring in the Hot Ones. What's it? Online show? It's a YouTube show, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. If you go on YouTube
Yeah.
and look up Hot Ones, it's an interview-based show where a guy over here in the US interviews celebrities while they're taking on an incrementally hotter selection of hot sauces on
Hot
wings,
sauce.
and we're talking the stuff that rarely sees the light
Yeah.
of day because it's so hot. And yeah, if you want to see Jennifer Lawrence crying or Shaquille O'Neal sweating, there's you got some big celebrities on there, and
Yeah,
usually
but
most of them.
basically, yeah, Sydney Sweeney featured on one episode, and she had this really happy, cute face that ended up becoming a meme for that
Mhm.
point in time. And yeah, basically, yeah, the Sweeney is moments in the game where we kind of smile like Sydney Sweeney does in that screen grabber photo.
Yeah.
Can't be a goal either for those playing
Yes.
at home.
Yeah. Yeah. It gives us. I always say it gives us the warm and fuzzies in the moment.
Yeah, there was a period
Which,
there when Backman's Union was getting a fair whack, but yeah, they're suffering lately. So
yeah.
not too many highlights coming from that area of the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Anyway,
Exactly.
yeah. Just forget to address new listeners who might be
Yeah, yeah.
tuning in and
I
just going,
sometimes
"What
bring
the
it up
fuck's going on
occasionally,
here?"
like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, then there we often say, oh, for anyone listening, like this is our opinion on this, but then it comes to the Sweeney, we're like, it's a Sweeney.
Sweeney,
Yeah.
yeah. Like Sweeney Todd.
Yeah. Sweeney, see. All right. Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. Should try to do that every couple of weeks, or just but yeah, sometimes, especially we've had such an emotional episode, we're just trying to get through the end of this as
Yeah,
well.
we don't really want to do the segments today.
Which great segue to getting into the player of the year votes, was just fucking like trying to find a needle in a stack of needles. Alrighty.
What?
Well, like trying to find a particular needle. Like I feel like trying to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's almost
It's late.
Yeah, it's almost 1 a.m. here. And this game just destroyed my soul, really. So, alrighty. But player of the year votes. Woo. My one vote, I've got Rosie. Again, this is a really weird one because sometimes we struggle to find players. We struggle to find room for players that we wanted to have in there. And it's not that Rosie and some of these players had bad games statistically. It's just when you lose by 13 goals and your captain has 28 disposals, and he had a reasonable game in the stats sheet, but even disposal efficiency was above 80%, so pretty good there. It's just unfortunately just one of those days that he deserves to be in the votes, but again, I couldn't put him up as high as I probably would have. Maybe if we'd won the game and he'd had a bit, but it's just it's such a shit show. But yeah, 9 score involvements. A decent, again, good statistical game. It's just you lost by 13 goals. I've got Kane Farrell in second in the votes. Again, probably much of the reasons I spoke about in my spotlight. He had 91% disposal efficiency with 22 disposals. 24 disposals. Almost 500 meters gained. 3 score involvements. Yeah, not much else really, but he had the rebound 50 game was reasonable as well, but and not as many clangers.
KPI.
Yeah, and not as many clangers. Yeah, especially for what his role is, but there's not nearly as many clangers as a lot of the other players in a similar disposal count. And he didn't even give away a free kick. So it just overall again,
Good on him.
Yeah. I got Butters with my 3 votes. Probably it's probably a bit mean to not have him up higher with 35 disposals, but again, it's tough when you lose a game like this. He had eight clearances. Did have a few, got some fines out of the game again. So 6 tackles. I think it was a reasonable game from him. Even almost 75% disposal efficiency, 13 score involvements, almost 500 meters gained. But it's just, again, a lot of those numbers possibly inflated by it's one of those games where how much of it was in time that didn't fucking matter, and it's so hard to read what the stats are. Like When did you, if he had 20 disposals in the second half, then who the fuck cares kind of stuff. So, but they are the numbers. They are the numbers of what they are. So, and that's probably a good segue into my 4 votes, which I just had to give it to Georgiades. I was like, you kick 3 goals in a game.
Yeah, he's having a good run, George.
Yeah, like fuck it.
Mostly thanks to everyone else being fucking below par.
Yeah, it really. And I hate. Yeah, yeah, and he kicked a couple of the goals he kicked was it late, but he's still leading well. He's leading. He's a couple of the goals he kicked. He kicked that nice goal where he kind of collects it on the boundary and kind of just works his way around and snaps it through from very close, but a little bit of footwork. And then the other couple of goals were nice leading target goals, which we kind of are missing. And again, it was in the second half, so there is what I just said about Butters. Who knows where his stats came?
Yeah.
But he still had to kick the goals, and his form, his goal kicking form looks good. And that's what I'm really kind of keying in on, is that he looks to have his form back in that respect. So 3 goals, 1. It took 6 marks. Yeah, it's where his position on the ground. It's what you the most you could hope for in a win, especially these days. I know the best forwards in the comp kick bags are 4 or 5, but we just haven't been that team. And he's the one coming back from a long-term injury, and he's probably playing better than anyone. He's leading our goal kicking now. So, And 5 votes, clearly, debutant, only found himself on an AFL list a fucking month ago. And as your tweet so eloquently put, it was really, he was one of the, he's the one on the day that showed a lot of endeavour and heart. And maybe that's debutant, energy. Who knows what? I don't really care. He played well and genuinely gives us another thing to think about, because I don't think any of us even a couple of weeks ago were really thinking this guy he was a depth pickup or whatever. But it's clear that the coaches had a lot more.
They saw something in him.
Yeah, and a lot more in mine. I didn't even realize his age. I don't think I had cottoned on to the fact he was that young either. So he's clearly both a development prospect, but someone they actually think can feature. And unfortunately, just his debut won't be remembered for much positivity. But I think it is kind of a unique thing that he made his debut in a Guernsey that's been retired for over a decade. There's not mmany players that could, it'll be one of those things like how many people actually get to debut in the prison bars across the years that go forward, but he's got a very unique debut Guernsey, which is good on him. So 5 votes. 5 votes was very easy for this one. I think the fans MVP went to him too, so I think it kind of just follows fan sentiment. But I had to give it to him based on expectation versus what he
I get you. And anyway. I voted in that fans MVP, and I'll be honest, I don't usually vote in that.
I always forget about it, to be honest, but I should.
But I made a point and I did vote for him. So didn't Yahtzee, same players though. So my 1 vote is Kane Farrell.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, 24 disposals, 91% efficiency, just a tick under 500 meters gained, 2 inside 50s with the 5 rebound 50s and also 5 marks. He also got 2 clearances. So again, when you're not a midfielder and you're contributing in stoppage, I like that.
Yeah.
When on the day we got fucking smashed.
The stoppage is an issue at the moment.
I think him and Bergman in a game we lost by 13 goals and fucking Brisbane had goal kickers everywhere. I thought him and Bergman put in a great shift against what the fuck's his name, Cameron, who kicked 2 goals on the day, but one was from a free kick he didn't even earn, and the other one, whatever. So
Bergman was close for me as well. It was clangers and disposal efficiency that probably
I thought Bergman's defensive action and positioning was quite good. But his disposal kind of, which is usually a positive for him, but it let him he let himself down there. But Farrell, 1 vote, thought he was in the best players. 2, I've given to Rosie. Like you said, vibe check right after the game had him nowhere near the votes, but again, rewatching the game and looking at it objectively, 28 disposals at 82%, 9 score involvements, which was second best on ground. Tick under 375 metres gained, 28 pressure acts, which I think was best on for Port Adelaide, this is.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is. 7 tackles, 8 marks. So there's enough there to say that the effort was there. Maybe headless chook type effort, but yeah. Objectively, still in our best players on the day, and maybe because the ball was in and around him most. Yeah. 3 votes goes to Mitch Georgiadis. A lot of what you said. Yeah, you've already said enough about some of these players. 3 goals, 9 disposals, 7 score involvements as a whole. So on top of his 3 goals, he had 4 other score involvements, 6 marks. So yeah, he, again, doing what you're chosen to do, and he's doing it. And one of the only forwards who looks like he's got his forward craft in fucking some sort of order, which is good. Like you said, coming off a long-term knee injury just adds weight to that, which it has done over the last handful of games for George. I've actually put Logan Evans at 4. While I did vote for him in the MVP, and a lot of people did, and my tweet was there, a lot of that is very emotion based. And while, I genuinely believe, and again, the heart, you mentioned the heart that he played with. That's a great word to use, because overall, we lacked a lot of heart. And for a debutant, it's definitely franked because it was his first game. 20 disposals, 6 of those contested, going at 70%, but also 424 metres gained, 3 inside 50s and 5 rebound 50s, which probably goes to show that two-way running. He's just the effort, the heart that you said, that endeavour to just impact wherever he could.
Yeah.
And five marks. So I thought it was a great debut game. And while I had no idea who he was originally, the professionals did. And he didn't put a foot wrong, apart from, like I said, a couple lapses of composure, which I absolutely do not hold against him for him being in his debut game. That you're mentioning about his age. I think, the mid-season draft, I think by and large, some people pick up some senior recruits, but I think it's a lot of the clubs treat it like for players who initially were looked upon favorably in their draft year, but for whatever reason had an interruption or a setback. And then they're like, all right, well, we want to see you 6 months later after you've played a bit of league footy or whatever it may be. And then we'll make a call because we've got that opportunity in the mid-season draft. So he's one of them, a young player who missed out in his draft year, and we've got him. So that's good. Butters, probably think you're probably a bit harsher on him than I clearly am.
Yeah.
And look, I get it. I absolutely get it. Yeah. Again, much like Rosie, if I'm doing my votes immediately after the game, I don't know if he would have been my best on ground, but 35 disposals at 74% efficiency, a tick under 500 metres gained, 13 score involvements, which was best on ground for Port, 8 clearances. I think 6 of those were from the centre, 4 rebound 50s and 6 tackles. So, and as well as that, he got a serious knock in the shoulder, I think, in the third quarter.
He did, which goes against what I was saying about the stats.
He's for a bit of pain. He's willing himself contest to contest. It's just, I think overall, it's just that cohesion, that teamwork. That's the biggest problem for me. Like, some of these.
It's not so much the individuals. It's
and
everything.
They're putting in, like, they're going, oh, I played a decent game, but it's not about you, the individual. It's about the team, and that's what is getting me quite frustrated at the moment. But look, I think he would, as a leader, I think he put in a good enough effort to be listed up the top for me, and that's it.
Yeah, I got very close to putting him top, but it was really just the sentiment with Evans, and I thought, and again, just giving the debutant the props there.
Well, someone commented on my tweet afterwards and said that Treadray gave Logan Evans the 3 votes. out of 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
I believe on 5AA they just do the 1, 2, 3. And
Yes,
like we've said, and I think everyone doing their votes that don't actually contribute to like a Brownlow medal, for example. Like there is a bit of emotion, but as well, like what bar that player has set for themselves, and then your votes kind of land in there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
Creed Awards are very prestigious, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we've even said before, it's kind of what's the bar for that player, and have they met that bar or gone over that bar?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
It does contribute.
Yeah, and sometimes some emotion goes involved. Like I think I actually, at the end of the day on Saturday, Friday for me, I just went, Evans is getting I was thinking about it in drunk. My drunk thoughts straight away was Evans getting the 5, and then I'll figure the rest of the fuck out. And then that's pretty much,
I was
pretty much stuck with that since. So that's how it went. All right. Well, that was a great chat about everything there. I think we've done a good job of that, considering there's just so much emotion and a lot of different moving parts involved in discussing everything that happened on the weekend. But hopefully this weekend we can get some back, just some positivity somewhere would be nice. Round 16, we head to a Marvel Stadium to take on the St Kilda Saints, who are probably in a similar weird rut at the moment, not unsure of what they're doing going forward in the future, and certainly not nearly as in a good a position on the ladder as us. Sunday afternoon again, and it's an early start for the day, but just on Sunday this time, 1:10 p.m. Eastern, 12:40 in Adelaide, I believe. I assume being Marvel and it being that there's rain around on the weekend in Melbourne, it'll be roof shut, so it just won't be an issue as far as weather conditions go. It'll just be Marvel with the roof shut. As I said, St Kilda are kind of they're 5-9 at the moment, I believe, and they're in a similar position in the sense of, especially they've got the unique nature. They've brought a coach back, which doesn't happen very often in the modern, game. And Ross,
particularly at the same club.
Yeah,
I brought him back to.
Yes, I still find that such a fascinating situation they've put themselves in. And there's a lot of questions being asked about game plan and how they're using some players, like some Max King, constantly under pressure, which I think is a little bit. I think I'd take him. As overall, but as I said, I think I mentioned at some point at the start of the podcast, we are the underdogs based on what the bookies are doing at the moment. I think we're about $2.10 and they're $1.70-$1.80. So it's close, but considering we're above them on the table and have 3 wins more than them, it's kind of an indictment on where we're at, but it's also just kind of the fair enough. We've lost 3 on the bounce in pretty disappointing fashion, and we're playing away. That's really kind of sometimes a split with bookies the fact that we're the away team and aren't traveling too well. They've got an interesting bill of health in the fact that they've got a lot of guys that on last check, which was they're coming off the bye as well. So you've got guys like Paddy Dow, Liam Stocker. I think Brad Crouch even could be possibly back, but Dougal Howard we won't have to face. He's out, but there's a few others that could be back, and they're not that any team is ever fully fit at this time of year, but they're probably at a reasonable bill of health. So it'll be a fairly decent side we face. I know we're probably a bit short on time, so maybe we won't run through the lines completely as in depth as we would have. But we've given the due time to what was a very emotional game on the weekend. I'll hand it over to you. What are your general thoughts, and maybe just something, maybe going back to the old school way we did it. I'm just changing on the fly with the time of the essence. What's kind of your thoughts generally on the game, and maybe probably your biggest watch of the game if you've got something in mind?
Well, like I said to you off air, behind the curtain, we sometimes tend to just start essentially recording the podcast without recording before. We just talk about the game that was and the game to come, and then we're like, maybe we should start recording. But like I said to you off air, like it's not even down to X's and O's for me. And we could do it line by line, and I could give you and the listeners my thoughts on matchups and things like that. But it's seriously the be all and end all for me across every fucking line in the team is effort and defensive accountability. I want to see players attacking the contest with vigor, having help by their teammates, and then when a teammate gets the ball, I want to see our teammates putting a fucking Shepherd on. I'd love to see Shepherd's stats, like, because I think we'd be fucking down the bottom, particularly in the last month of football. Like, yeah, maybe not that obvious on the telecast. Maybe it is for some people, but it's something that I've definitely noticed that we're just not working for each other, with or without the ball, and that's it's seemingly such an easy fucking fix, and everything from that point on can fall into line. They really need to just rekindle that team ethos that has seemingly eluded them for whatever reason, whether it's their youth for some of them. They're having a lapse in concentration or confidence. But that is the be all and end all for me, because we've made, I think, 4 changes the last 2 games, is it? We can't keep doing that. We can't keep pulling those levers so frequently. The closer we get to the end of the season as well. If we're going to have any chance, we need to solidify who we think is the best 22, and not necessarily talent-wise. Who's going to put in the best fucking effort for 4 quarters?
Yeah.
Because more often than not, that will get you closer to the result that you want. And by and large, I think Ollie Lord's going to be better for the run. I think he looks better against Brisbane.
Yeah, a couple of goals.
Opportunities. I think... Sorry, before we should go too deep, Port Adelaide put their injury list up while we've been recording.
Oh, yes, I'd be interested. I haven't seen it yet, so...
Jace Burgoyne is out for 1 to 2 weeks with a hamstring. Ryan Burton has
cancel the podcast. I'm done. No.
Yeah, I know. Life's not worth living anymore. We're just thinking about Peter Burgoyne in 04 with his long hair, and how Jace is just kind of giving us that warmth because they look like the same fucking person, and now he's unfortunately out.
Yeah, there goes my SWEENEY contender next week.
Yeah. Ryan Burton, no Jace Burgoyne tackles for you, Dave.
Yeah.
Ryan Burton's foot injury has been confirmed as a foot injury, and he's out for 3 to 4 weeks, apparently.
Okay.
So, again, probably was going to be dropped on form, but can't get back into form because he's fucking injured. And Ivan Soldo's grumbly knee has turned into a 4-week injury.
Interesting.
Willie
That's
Rowley's still listed as a test. Apart from that, it's just a bit of SANFL mumbo jumbo. So yeah,
no, it's geez, that flips some magnets, doesn't it? I know Sweet had already come in for Soldo, so I guess he stays in.
I don't think it's like I had Soldo as my watch last week, as we messaged throughout the week after selections, and I thought it was a bold choice. I didn't think Soldo was going to get dropped. But obviously there was more to it than just an omission in his regard. And I thought, but now having Sweet in the team, I don't think it would be appropriate to drop him because Oscar McInerney had a day out. Like you do, he's played in and around 50 games, Jordan Sweet. And again, we didn't recruit him to be an A-grade ruckman right now. Like I think, again, that chat about recruitment and pertaining more to Sweet, like that's crap.
Yeah,
but he's got an opportunity now, much like he did earlier in the season, and I think he performed well the last time we came up against St Kilda. So looking forward to that.
Yeah,
a couple of magnets will be switched, but again, it doesn't come down to X's and O's for me. Like I said, what are your thoughts?
Pretty similar. Yeah, it's more obviously effort and endeavor and is kind of the thing we keep talking about time and time again. And as you just touched on, it's more about that. I find it interesting that we're coming up against a team that's probably in confidence is probably not a strong suit of St Kilda gameplay at the moment. And certainly they're not a team that's going to run over the top of us like They've had the propensity to have a run like they did. They almost beat GWS earlier in the year when GWS was still undefeated, I'm pretty sure, and they came back and kicked or maybe the 5 last goals of the game to get back within a point.
Yeah.
And then they even tried to make a game of it against Brisbane, who had beaten them pretty handily for most of the game a few weeks ago. I think possibly the last game before the bye. So they can have a run in them, but it's just like they're not a team. Yeah. They're not a team to me, and certainly against us earlier in the year, when we played them at Adelaide Oval, it was the game where we went injuries. Really, we were getting. I think we were down
at
to
the end.
We were down
It was
to 2.
inaccuracy to start,
Yeah.
and injuries at the end. But apart from that, I felt we completely outplayed them. So
Yeah, and considering we were down to like 2 players on the bench and had some significant injuries within the game, they couldn't find a way to make a run on us, which I remember the commentator saying, this is the time, like you got to take advantage of this. And they just didn't have that kind of lever to pull or, switch to flick, whatever you want to call it. It's just, they couldn't do it. So I think it's an opportunity if we do have a reckoning within the club during the week to be like, all right, we're going to go back to bare bones a little bit. Let's play some hard, tough footy and, stick to what we're doing, because you're not just going to throw the game plan out the window, but you're just going to try to tighten up some of those things. It's a decent opposition and decent opportunity to do that. Again, against a team that just doesn't do a lot of the problems we've had. Again, you touched on it as in your apologist segment. The teams we've been playing were 3 of the really stylistic teams towards the end of last year that made the preliminary final so exciting. And all of them are getting back to some of that form over the last 3 weeks. We caught Carlton right when they're really getting to the swing of form that has Carlton fans thinking they're the ones that challenge Sydney this week, and Dan Gorringe is losing his mind and all of his lids out of his kitchen.
Fairly so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No dramas with that. GWS got some key players back right when we played them and started playing some of the footy they were earlier in the year. Brisbane clearly have been talked about as finding form across the last month, and we saw probably the statement game of their season. St Kilda aren't that team, and
That's a good call.
Yeah. So, I think this is an opportunity, maybe. And again, I have my larger concerns in the more wider world of what we're doing going forward in the future, and because this situation will just rear its ugly head again whenever Ken's next in it. But I think this week, just looking at it pragmatically, this is what where we're at the moment. And I do have a little bit of confidence we can get back on the winners list this week. I think defensively, I think I'm just I didn't write my stats down right. I know Dougal Howard started the last game, but I think the injury list was released after the game and that he's out. Not that he didn't do much against us last time.
He had a Charlie to battle with last time.
Yeah, but I do believe he's going to be out, and then we're going to have. I think it's a pretty reasonably undermanned defense of theirs, and we'll see. I think it's a chance for Ollie Lord to, now that he's going to be 3 weeks into the side now, coming up against hopefully getting a little bit more. Obviously better service, and if we can we flip tilt I know they always talk about in ice hockey, they talk about tipping the ice, like when plays going one way in ice hockey, they talk about how the teams are tilting the ice one way or the other. What we need to do is tilt the field, because we've been seeing the field go the other way a lot the last couple of weeks.
The ball starts rolling our way.
Yeah, exactly. But we want to see just in the momentum and how we're playing, and just a little bit more possession in midfield and a little bit more control of that aspect of the game, and just territory battle, like have the ball more in possession to deliver inside 50 from forward of center, rather than trying to bomb it forward from, because sometimes we're just hammering it forward from behind center a little bit, and that's when it's getting into those, gets into a possession battle at the half forward flank, rather than actually getting into inside the forward 50 for our forwards to, and I feel like this is going to be the game to get a bit more of that. I'm not disrespecting saying I've got there's just, you look through their team and there's a lot of good players around there, but they're not getting the year, I know there's been a lot of like the Windhagers and Mitch Owens and guys like that they were really high on after last year. They just haven't gone on. this year as
like,
expected. Didn't one of them get?
Like I look at their team.
There's
And
someone that got
I
dropped
look at their
recently, I
team
think.
and I go, I think we're a better team than them.
Yeah.
Even granted that, we've got some injuries. They've clearly got some injuries.
Oh, it's Philippou that
Whereas,
got.
like, I look at Brisbane's
Yeah.
team, and although they have their injuries too, I go, I understand how they beat us.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the margin is a separate issue. But yeah. But now I agree that I'm a little bit more confident. I'm probably a little bit more confident, funnily enough, than I was leading into Brisbane. And
with everything that's happened since, yeah.
And again, like I said, 2 times that we've played St Kilda at Marvel. In recent times we've got a spirited win. And it's really all we need to do. I don't care. 1 point, 100 points. We just really need to win, get our season back on track, and regain some confidence. And that is effort. The effort comes. Our forwards are using have got a lot more space to work with. Our defense have a lot less pressure to deal with, and that's all it comes down to.
Yeah. I think especially with Ollie Lord, as I said, 3 games into his AFL return, Mitch Georgiades off the back of 3 weeks and 3 or 4 weeks in a row now of 3 games, 3 goals a game. If they can all,
but look, even Todd, who look, if our SNFL side was doing any more, and I think Tom Scully will be a fairly decent player in time. I don't think that they're going to pull that lever. Big game for Todd. But he had 2 scoring shots on Saturday and he had 4 scoring shots the week before. Would love his accuracy to improve. I don't think he's going to be dropped, although I know a lot of people think he will be. And look, his form ain't great, but if our team is playing in a way that allows him to play his best game as well, then surely just going on with what you're saying, like our forwards, we need to create an environment where our forwards have a better opportunity to excel.
I was just trying to get up, because I'm just looking at even what St Kilda have done recently. They're not scoring. I mean, they had that comeback against Brisbane. They ended up scoring 16 goals and getting over, but I think that was their first time that they'd scored over 100 points for the year.
In a long time.
Yeah, and they beat Gold Coast by 3 points with a 51-48 scoreline. Barely scraped over the line against West Coast really the week before that, and then they got almost a 38-point loss to Melbourne back at near the end of May, so that's their last month of footy prior to playing us. And Melbourne aren't going great guns, so they're just not. They don't score heavily. Unless, like Brisbane taking their foot off the gas really is what let them back into that one a little bit and got them over 100 points. So basically the real key here is just hold them, below, if we can hold them to 70 points or less, and then we should be good enough to beat that score line. And hopefully by 20 or 30 points would be nice. But as you said, I'll take just whatever scrappy, back to basics, some hard footy, get a little bit of something out of the game to see that there's been some changes and some hard talks had during the week. If I can get all those kind of signs out of the game while we win by 15, 20, 30 points, whatever it be, I'll be happy enough with that. Particularly as I said, not that bookies mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but we are the underdogs in that sense. So it's an interesting kind of intriguing setup for the game. Anything else? Or you're happy to close out and wrap up this emotional roller coaster we've been on?
I understand that emotions are high, and maybe there's some people tuning in to see if we're going to continue the verbal barrage. But I'm a passionate person. I'm an emotional person at the best of times, but ultimately I like to keep a level head. Our season is in actual fact still alive, and whether the law of averages would say that we're going to go anywhere, that's taken in one hand, but I generally like to have a glass half full approach, and I hope for a win this week, and I hope it continues to snowball in the positive. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be here. I'll still be here and supporting as much as I can.
Yeah, as we both will every week, both on the podcast as well as, obviously just supporting in our own way. Yeah, the time for a proper post-mortem will be when the season's done, and then that's when truly that's when you really have to get into it. But at the moment, while there is heavy discussions and needed discussions to be had, there is a season still at play, and you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky. So
Abraham Lincoln.
Anyway, thank you for joining me as always, Jamie. I know it's always a tough one to come on after losses like this, but we fucking did it. We got through it.
Much easier not being alone. Having someone else to bounce and dialogue with. And what I would also say is for everyone who's listening or watching on YouTube, thanks. It's tough. I know as a consumer of football content, it's tough when your team's losing. And if you are tuning in, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hope you continue. And we love the interactions and support.
Yes, no, thank you as always. And again, a reminder, obviously our socials, _ the Creed on Twitter and Instagram, and obviously just the Creed on Facebook. And I do, it's on Threads as well. I just post main. That doesn't. Is that really a thing? I don't know. I just post on there anyway because there's suddenly 50 followers.
You miss 100% of shots you don't take. So
exactly.
You got to post on Threads just in case someone's lurking on there that wants support content.
As you like to say on the socials, let the algorithm. Go on. As I said at the top of the show as well, the Patreon's coming with some heat this week with the first of our special episodes looking back on the great year that was 2004. So patreon.com/thecreed1870. Sign up there, and but you'll see a preview of that coming this week as well. But the full experience will be on Patreon. That's about it. Good. Let's just look forward to a little bit of a riding of the ship this week. Make St Kilda ask the hard questions. I want to see Ross. Nothing against Ross Lyon, but I want to see Ross Lyon plastered across AFL 360 and all the talk shows next week instead of Ken Hinkley.
I want a sarcastic Ross Lyon press conference after a loss. That's entertaining.
One of those ones where his head's a little bobbing away and he's just
bobbling. There's
kind of mumbling a little bit,
stuff,
and you having to Google half of his references, and let's have one of those.
Fuck yeah, go Port.
Calm the fucking pair.
Everyone.